I now declare the June Council meeting open at 6:30 p.m. and welcome all of those in attendance. I now invite Councillor Lim to read the acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City of Melville acknowledges the Bibbulmun people as the traditional custodians of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders past, present and future.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Now I take the opportunity to welcome the community in attendance in the public gallery and online. And tonight we'll be discussing and making decisions on matters you have an interest in. And the City is committed to listening to the community, and I ask you to assist with our decision-making process through mutual respect by not interrupting the meeting. And this will assist elected members in focusing on the discussions, debate and outcome of matters before them tonight. Now, should you wish to engage with the City on any matter, please make contact with the City or your elected members outside this meeting. And if you're planning on asking a question during public question time and you haven't already submitted the question to us in writing, it would be appreciated if you could complete a question time form found on the table to your left and hand it to an officer prior to the commencement of the question time. Now, I will just mention to you also that we cannot change the order of the meeting tonight with the reports because we have a number of urgent matters that need to be decided on because of end of financial year. So I'm just letting you know that the non-urgent items will come at the end of the meeting. So I draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. Item 2, attendance and apologies. The following councillors are on leave of absence: Councillor Barber and Councillor Woodall. There are no councillors providing an apology for this evening. Item 3, declarations by members. We now move into declarations by members. Are there any declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting? Nil. Declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin? Nil. Item 4, announcements by the presiding member. There are no deputations or written submissions that have been received for this evening. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening? Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, no disclosures have been received.
Thank you. Moving on to...
Madam Mayor?
Councillor Wheatland.
Sorry, in relation to the Walga item, I did flag it last week as a state councillor if I need to declare an interest in that item.
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, no, I don't believe so. It just relates to the Walga preferred supplier panel. Thank you.
Now moving on to public question time. I now open a question time at 6:34 p.m. A number of questions have been received with notice this evening, and if we have the questioner in attendance or have a representative to ask the question, could you please make your way to the microphone to ask your question when you're called? If there's no one in the audience to ask the question and the question is not taken on notice, a question and response will be provided in the minutes of this meeting, which will be available to the public on Friday, 19th of June. Those asking questions are Dr J Stevens of Bicton, Mr L Malloy of Leeming, Miss E Nicholson of Burragoon, Mr R Hopkinson of Applecross, Miss K Ribbink of Mount Pleasant, Miss E Cole of Melville, Mr D Morley of Willagee, Mr J Miotti of Leeming, Mr M McCleary of Bicton, Miss E Cole of Melville. Additional questions? All right, thank you. I now call upon Dr J Stevens from Bicton. Is he present? Does he have a representative present? If not, we'll move on to Mr L. Malloy of Leeming. Please come forward to ask your question. Can you turn your microphone on, please? Thank you.
There you go. Have I got to state anything, or do I just ask my questions? Do I have to state anything, or do I just ask my
No,
questions?
please just ask your questions.
I'll use it. Yep. Okay, cool. So it's in regards to the John Connell Reserve. Mine aren't very political or like, well, you buy your books or anything. I just want to know why the works are being undertaken. Is it because the cricket club of, say, 200 members asked for it? Or is there more to it? Is there a conflict of interest in certain members of the council that are on the member board and part of the club? Is that why it's getting approved or anything? It just doesn't make sense to me why it's getting approved.
Okay. Director Pickering, Community Development. Could you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Mr Malloy. The John Connell Reserve Field Extension has been a long-standing item with the city and was identified in the city's active reserve infrastructure strategy back in 2020. Following the outcome of a clearing permit application, which enabled clearing, a decision was required to be made as the clearing permit has a time limit to complete works. Furthermore, the project received federal government funding in 2021 and a decision needed to be made following the clearing permit outcome. Thanks.
So we're going to do a $4.7 million...
Sorry, excuse me.
sorry.
Rather than run a commentary, can you please just ask the questions you notified us of?
I wasn't running commentary, I was asking
What's
a
your
question
next
back to that
question, please?
Has the council evaluated the current traffic levels on Dimon Court to the sports centres? What solutions are planned to handle this growth, especially if Beasley Roads needs to be open for emergency access? So last time it was submitted, the emergency services people said that if anything else becomes of Dimon Court, because there's only one way in and out for emergencies, then it's got to be opened onto Beasley. So has that been planned or forecasted into that $4.7 million piece of grass for cricket pitch?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Malloy. Director Pickering, Community Development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you again for your questions. So yes, the last recorded traffic volumes at Dimon Court were completed in August 2024, with an average weekday traffic volume of 975 vehicles a day. Dimon Court is a local access road and acceptable traffic volumes are up to 3,000 vehicles per day. And while there is an expectation that traffic volumes would increase with the field extension, these volumes are expected to fall well below the 3,000 vehicle movements per day. And in answer to your question around Beasley Road, as per the previous response, the expected increase in traffic volumes are expected to fall within the limits of the local access road. That said, as part of the draft master plan for the overall John Connell site, connections to Beasley Road are being investigated more to support the other users of the site, such as archery and pigeon racing and the Melville Golf Centre and driving range.
Yeah, that's
Excuse
fine.
me. In addition, other advantages including improved circulation through the site, reduction in traffic load on Dimon Court and a secondary emergency access egress point are also being included in the John Connell Master Plan review.
Your next question, please.
No, but that so I'm not allowed to run in commentary, but like I live on Dimon Court and that thing was put there in the rain when there was no traffic there. There's more than 300 people go down Dimon Court of a day. I live on the corner. You people don't. I live it firsthand. So if you're telling me that it's 300 people, you are dreaming. Anyway, I'm not allowed to comment, but I'm submitting my thoughts because they're not thoughts, they're facts.
Okay,
I
thank
pay
you very
rates,
much.
you answer them.
Thank you.
Anyway, so we're spending $4.7 million on a cricket pitch. Yet we've got the Leeming Rec Centre that no one uses during the week. I take photos every day when I drive past there on my bike. This is part of my question. It's a long-winded one, but I'm trying to get my point because you're very... Anyway, so there's 200 members at the cricket club. We're spending $4.7 million on a cricket pitch. And then yet the Leeming Rec Centre that's been in the community for 40 plus years, that they use the cricket pitch down at John Connell Reserve maybe for 2 months a year, maybe, if that. The rec centre does all the school events, offers 3,500 people go through there on a weekend alone, never alone the 200 people that go to a cricket pitch for 2 months of the year. The Leeming Rec Centre provides all school activities, indoor soccer, basketball, netball. We can play cricket there indoors all year round, yet we're not prioritising that because there's conflict of interest with members here that are part of the cricket club.
Please do not make
Anyway.
accusations. Thank you. So Director Pickering, Community Development, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I mentioned before, the planning for John Connell Reserve has been a topic for many years, but more recently the City has allocated resources to review and strategically plan for the Leeming Recreation Centre, which is coming towards its end of life. On this basis, the City isn't prioritising one project over the other. However, a decision on the John Connell Reserve field extension was required due to the timeframe restrictions under the approved clearing permit and the federal government funding attached to the project. Thanks.
If you could also respond to question 5, Director Pickering.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, as per the previous response, the City is not prioritising John Connell Reserve Field Extension over the Leeming Recreation Centre. While the Leeming Recreation Centre is of an age, it's still servicing the community. However, the City is undertaking planning now for the centre on the basis it is nearing its end of life, with a view that it will be able to be replaced before the centre is unserviceable to the community.
Thank you. I now call upon Ms E. Nicholson of Burragoon.
Nothing's changed much here, has it, at the City of Melville? If anything, it's gotten worse with your responses.
I'm
sorry,
if
that's
you
just
do
a
not
comment. I've said
reflect
it now, so
negatively
there
on
we
the
go. I can
council, that
start.
is not the
Burragoon
purpose
Lake
of
is
having
formally listed in the Director
an
of
audience
Important
here.
Wetlands.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, were you talking?
Yes, yes,
Okay. I thought I was asking the question.
yes, when I ask you to.
Okay.
Okay, no negative reflections, please. Can you
No.
just ask your question? Thank you.
Burragoon Lake is formally listed in the Directory of Important Wetlands in Australia by Environment Australia. This federal designation recognises it as a critical Australian habitat, specifically noting its role as a major breeding colony for waterbirds, such as the Australian white ibis, cormorants and darters, and its protection under the Federal Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act as an environmentally sensitive area. Numerous environmental and water quality studies have been conducted on the lake over many years to track its condition. This is my question. Toxins and causes. Regarding historical water quality studies conducted on Burragoon Lake, which specific chemical, biological or metal-based toxins have been detected in the water column and sediment, and what are their recorded quantities? Additionally, which localised catchment sources or infrastructure issues had the City's investigations identified as the primary drivers of this contamination?
Thank you. Director Coton, Environment and Infrastructure, could you respond?
Yes, thank you for your questions. Through you, Madam Mayor. Burragoon Lake's been the subject of environmental monitoring and scientific investigations for many years due to its ecological significance and protected wetland status. Sediment testing completed in 2025 identified elevated levels of some metals, including lead, arsenic, mercury, nickel and zinc in isolated locations within the lake sediments. Importantly, these guideline exceedance investigation trigger levels do not automatically indicate immediate risk to public health or widespread ecosystem failure. Elevated metal concentrations are normal in long-established urban wetlands, particularly those located adjacent to major transport corridors such as Leach Highway or within historically disturbed urban catchments. The investigations indicate that contamination within Burragoon Lake is localised rather than widespread across the entire lake system, and the results are helping guide future monitoring and management actions. Acid sulphate soil conditions were also identified within parts of the lake bed, which are naturally occurring in many wetlands across the Swan Coastal Plain and are carefully managed during any disturbance works. In relation to the second question, environmental investigations indicate that water quality pressures within Burragoon Lake are likely associated with long-term urban catchment influences and the natural characteristics of an ageing wetland system within a highly developed urban environment. Potential contributing factors include stormwater runoff from surrounding residential areas and Leach Highway, historical urban development, organic sediment accumulation, nutrient inflows from urban runoff, restricted flushing typical of closed wetland systems. Naturally occurring acid sulphate soils within the lake sediments may also contribute to water quality challenges if disturbed. Many urban wetlands across Perth experience similar pressures due to their location within developed catchments. The recent investigations identified some localised sediment hotspots that warrant further assessment. However, the results do not indicate widespread contamination throughout the entire lake.
And you have another question, Ms Nicholson.
Mitigant remediation and timelines. In light of Burragoon Lake's status as a federally protected, environmentally sensitive area, what active measures is the city taking to reduce or eliminate these harmful toxins?
Director Coton.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the city continues to actively manage Burragoon Lake to protect its environmental, cultural and community values. Current management actions focus on improving ecological resilience, minimising disturbance and reducing pollutants entering the lake system. So specific current measures include ongoing water quality monitoring, environmental controls during maintenance work, minimising sediment disturbance and routine inspection of surrounding drainage infrastructure, annual revegetation programs using native sedges and rushes, which assist with nutrient uptake, sediment filtration, bank stabilisation and improvement of overall water quality. Gross pollutant traps have been installed within the surrounding drainage network to capture litter, sediment and other urban pollutants before they enter the lake system. The city's ongoing monitoring and management approach helps identify issues early and supports practical long-term environmental improvement outcomes for the lake.
Furthermore, what are the city's future remediation plans to restore the lake's water quality, and what specific implementation guide timelines have been set for these actions?
Director Coton.
The city recognises the ecological importance of Burragoon Lake and remains committed to its long-term protection and management. Current investigations and monitoring programs are helping improve understanding of the lake's environmental condition and inform future management priorities. Future management actions are expected to focus on continued water quality monitoring, improvement of stormwater quality entering the lake, progressive ecological restoration and ongoing revegetation of fringing wetland vegetation using native sedges and rushes. A key management priority is minimising disturbance to lake sediments and supporting the natural filtering and stabilisation functions provided by the healthy wetland vegetation. Urban wetlands are dynamic natural systems that respond to seasonal conditions, groundwater fluctuations and surrounding land use over long periods of time. The city's focus remains on adaptive management and practical measures that support the long-term health and resilience of the lake system.
Thank you very much. Now I'll call upon Mr. R. Hopkinson of Applecross. If he's not present, I shall continue on with Ms. Kay Ribank of Mount Pleasant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. In a question in April, I asked the City of Melville, why did it not advertise a plan to remove bushland for a new cricket oval? The answer I got was the outreach was done by Leeming Spartans and therefore the city did not need to advertise, but they did put a notice on the website. In a follow-up question I asked, if the permit was sought by Leeming Spartans Cricket Club, how can the city be responsible for the financial commitment required to fulfil the conditions of the clearing permit? The answer I then got was that it was the city that opted to progress the extension. So which is it? Was it the responsibility of Leeming Spartans or the council? And if the council, why was there no real effort to actively inform the community in the same way has been done for other projects such as Shirley Strickland.
Director Pickering, Community Development.
Thank you for your question. The questions read out is different to the question that was provided in writing. So if I could take that on notice, please.
I actually did put this question in writing about a week ago.
Did you get a confirmation?
This was in follow-up to the question I got an answer from.
We'll just check that. If you could proceed with your other question,
That
please.
will be my question. This consolidates my questions. This consolidates my questions.
Yes, if we could just, we'll deal with your matter afterwards when the officer has found your other question. In the meantime, we'll ask Ms Cole of Melville to come forward and ask her questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. So my questions on notice were also, again, about the proposed oval extension at John Connell Reserve. Given that the remediation of the former landfill is a known future obligation, how much funding has been accumulated towards the liability since the landfill closed in 2000?
Director Tuffin, Corporate Services.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The City of Melville has established a refuge facility reserve which has the following purpose: to be used for payments relating to the establishment and operation of waste management facilities, funding associated costs and the costs of landscaping, environmental and rehabilitation works of former refuge tip sites operated or funded by the City of Melville. The reserve is also used for any additional waste collection, management and disposal costs of waste associated with storm, disaster or major pollutant events. The expected closing balance of this reserve at the end of this financial will be $14,216,362.
Ms Cole, your
Thank
next
you.
question.
Why was the landfill rehabilitation option not treated as the preferred scenario in the oval extension, given the initial wider community support and the statutory requirement to do so?
Director Pickering.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's assumed that the initial wider community support referenced in your question is in relation to the engagement undertaken in 2023, where the results can be found on the City's website. It should be noted that the results of this engagement showed the community was actually divided in opinion in a scenario survey completed in November 2023. In that survey, 2 questions were asked in relation to playing field options. In the first question, question 13, the first option, option A, was construction on the former landfill, and the second option, option B, was the field extension. A total of 205 people answered this question in the survey, and 47% supported option A and 42% supported option B, with 11% unsure. In the second question, a total of 177 people were asked which option do they prefer, whereby 29% supported option A, which was multi-use oval on the former landfill, and option B, field extension, had 65% support. 6% of respondents for this question were unsure. It should be noted that there were 2 questions on this topic, as survey logic was used as the questions were dependent on how respondents answered the previous question, question 12, which was to do with the location of the archery and pigeon club facilities. When combining the results of both questions, 39% supported option A, multi-use oval on the former landfill site, and 53% supported option B, the field extension. In reference to the City's statutory requirement to rehabilitate, when a multi-use oval is one option, further options exist to support outdoor recreational opportunities. These are being explored as part of the master plan process. Importantly, any use of the city's refuse facilities reserve is restricted to specific waste-related purposes, including the establishment and operation of waste management facilities, associated waste management costs, and environmental rehabilitation activities at former refuse tip sites. The reserve cannot be used to fund unrelated infrastructure or community facilities such as turfing, sports lighting, buildings or car parking.
And your next question, Ms Cole?
Has the city assessed whether the existing Bankshire woodland, which is proposed to be cleared, acts as a phyto barrier or stabilising ecological buffer to the contaminants in the former tip?
Director Pickering?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, the City will ensure that any contaminants identified during the detailed design or construction phases of the project are appropriately investigated, assessed and managed in accordance with relevant regulatory and environmental requirements.
Thank you very much, Ms Cole.
Can I ask another question?
What is your question, please?
Well, the question is about the trees. Have you actually checked on the trees?
Director Pickering?
I think that's probably more of a question for Director Coaten, please.
Director Coaten, Infrastructure?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so if you're specifically asking if that study has been done, if it is acting as a phytocap, the answer is no.
Mr Deeb Morley of Willagee?
Well, good evening, everyone. Madam Mayor, councillors, lovely to be with you. And everyone watching the live stream at home, hello. It's great to be with you once again. I have a question that relates to the John Connell Reserve, and specifically, can council confirm what the notice of tender for the supply and installation of turf published in the West Australian newspaper on the 18th or 19th of May, apologies for not knowing the exact date, was actually intended for? Specifically, was it for the laying of turf at the proposed extended cricket oval and pitch at the Spartan Cricket Club in John Connell Reserve?
Director Coaten, Environment and Infrastructure?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, the tender for supply and installation of turf was just part of the city's standard procurement processes to service our turf requirements across the city. So it's not specifically related to the extended cricket oval at John Connell Reserve, and it's not connected to the clearing matter. However, if an oval extension were to proceed, the city may choose to utilise this tender arrangement for turf works, or alternatively a separate and specific contract might be established to cover the full scope of works associated with that project.
Thank you, Director Coaten. So my understanding of that answer is that it is possible it could be involved in any of the laying of turf at the John Connell Reserve if clearing was approved. Is that right?
Pardon, what was your question?
It is possible. Is that possible that it could be that tender or the advertisement could be used as part of the actual clearing and laying of turf in the John Connell Reserve if it was approved?
Director Coaten?
It is possible, but that wasn't the intent of calling the tender.
Okay. My secondary question then, Madam Mayor, if you'd be so kind, is if it is true, if that is possible, how does council justify engaging contractors to supply and install turf before the final decision regarding the fate of the 0.68 hectares of native bushland in John Connell Reserve is made at the special electors meeting on March 23, 2026?
Director Coaten?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And let me just restate the answer to the first question. No, the tender isn't specific to John Connell. It is for our normal turf requirements.
But it is possible.
Director
Through
Coaten?
you, Madam Mayor.
It is possible, but that wasn't the intent of, that wasn't the reason for calling the tender. The tender was called because we have an ongoing requirement for this service.
Is the city able to be more specific about what it could be used for?
Yes, probably if you need very detailed answers, it's probably best to communicate with Director Coaten outside this meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Khan. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone.
Mr. J. Yes, we have a response for Ms. Kay Ribbing of Mount Pleasant. Thank you, Ms. Newman, Head of Governance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through Mrs. Rubink, we did receive an email from you on the 4th of June with a series of questions for tonight's meeting. It does appear another email was sent on the 6th of June and has been overlooked. We will endeavour to get those responses to you as quickly as possible. I apologise for that.
So do you wish to proceed with your other questions? Ms. Rubik? No. Okay, thank you. Mr. J. Miotti, Leeming?
Good evening. My first question goes to actually a question that was just answered by the Director of Community Development in regards to the questions in the survey of 2023. And I just want to seek some clarity to that after I've asked my question. So in the business case for the John Connell Reserve Playing Field Extension proposal, as I believe that is its official title, is that correct? Is that what that project's official title is with council? Can I just confirm that?
Director Pickering?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The business case was an attachment that was presented to Council as part of the deliberation on the field extension at the recent May Council meeting. The John Connell Reserve Master Plan is the name of the larger project.
Yes, but the John Connell Master Plan has not and was not just this field oval extension. That seems to have morphed, which we'll get to in my question. But this is a separate project to the John Connell Master Plan. Do you acknowledge that it's a separate proposal to the John College Master Plan? Because so far that has come before council twice.
I'll ask the Director. Director Pickering?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The playing field extension proposal was a proposal that was included in the John Connell Reserve Master Plan.
Okay. So in that business, in that proposal in the April 2026 minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting under stakeholder engagement, that there was no reference to any formal community consultation such as surveys, submissions or town hall meetings. Under the IAP2 framework, to which the City of Melville seeks to adhere to, quality community engagement is not a minor procedural step, but a foundational aspect of the planning and design process. That being the case, I ask the following questions. What was the full extent of community engagement associated with the John Connell Reserve Master Plan and Playing Field Extension proposal, either undertaken by the City of Melville or the Leeming Spartans Cricket Club on behalf of the City of Melville as it applied to the clearing permit, CPS 10237/1, and does that meet the IAP2 standard?
Director Pickering?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. The City conducted a range of engagement activities for the John Connell Reserve Master Plan between November 2022 and February 2024. Key activities ranged from consultation to collaboration on the IAP2 spectrum. Key engagement subsets were as follows: the formation of a community reference group, the John Connell Collective, the formation of a Wajak Noongar reference group, a community survey that received 645 responses, youth engagement with students at Leeming Senior High School and Leeming Senior High School Education Support Centre, and a scenarios survey completed by 447 respondents. A range of other activities were undertaken to support awareness of the project and facilitate opportunities for involvement. Further details regarding the engagement process can be found at the John Connell Reserve Master Plan Melville Talks webpage. Under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, the responsibility for managing the clearing permit application process, including public advertising and the invitation for submission, rests with the Department of Water Environmental Regulation, or DEWA, as the assessing authority. In this case, DEWA undertook public notification of the application in accordance with its statutory requirements, which are designed to ensure procedural fairness and provide the community with an opportunity to comment. The City relied on this legislated process to fulfil the formal consultation obligations associated with that application. As the City was not the decision maker or the administrating authority, it did not have a prescribed role in independently issuing formal notification of the submission period. However, to help raise awareness of the public advertising period, the City updated the John Connell Reserve Master Plan project page, informed the John Connell Collective and most importantly the Whadjuk Noongar Reference Group, and provided an email update to page followers with information about the consultation process and how community members could participate. Following the conditional approval of the permit on the 30th of June 2025, a further update was provided outlining information regarding the appeals process. Engagement regarding the field extension took place with stakeholder groups in late 2025 and early 2026.
Now, I need to interrupt the question time because we have in our meeting procedures local law, subject to subclause 3, public question time is for a period of 15 minutes. The Council may by resolution agree to extend public question time in 5-minute increments to a maximum of 30 minutes. We have missed the 5-minute increments. We are now at 30 minutes, so our question time has expired. So I'll need to take the rest of the questions on notice and they will be answered in the minutes. So thank you very much for your questions. Yes, very seriously, these are the local laws.
Can I ask the last part of that first question? Because it really comes to what has been said tonight and it's not lining up with the facts, all right? Because
I will take one more question and one more answer and then question time is over. Thank you.
Right, you mentioned the John Connell Reserve Scenario Options Survey 2024. How is it that the same question, the exact same question, appears twice? First is question 13 on page 7 and 8, and then is question 15 on page 14 and 15. Why is the same question in the survey twice? Who conducted both? And how were such different results arrived at? And can I point out that that second survey had 45% of the respondents from the Leeming Spartans Cricket Club and 96% of them supported the option to clear the oval. That had 177 recipients. Now, the other question, which had 47% in favour of keeping the bushland and building the oval, had over, I think it was 230 or 240 recipients on that. How are you saying that there is, you're saying that there's somehow confusion or that it wasn't clear what the community wanted when it's clearly a stacked survey?
Thank you, Mr Miotti. I will ask Director Pickering to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. And as already answered tonight, that particular question appeared twice because it was governed by survey logic in the background. Survey respondents were offered the opportunity to select their preference for the placement and configuration of archery pigeon racing facilities prior to the question which asks about multi-use sporting field placement. So that site vision was considered as a whole by each respondent. The same process was undertaken for access ways and activity preferences for the community park. And the combined results are presented on pages 24, 25 and 26 of the master plan.
Thank you very much. I now ask you, all the other questions will be taken on notice. All of these answers will be in the minutes of this meeting. So now question time has ended at 7:09. Item 7, awards and presentations. There are no awards or presentations for this evening. Item 8, applications for new leave of absence. The following requests for leave of absence has been received from Councillor Panayiotou for approximately 5 weeks in August and September, Councillor Green for 1 week in July, Are there any other requests for leaves of absence? There are no further requests. I shall ask for a mover and seconder to accept these leaves of absence. Thank you, Councillor McGoldrick, seconded Councillor York. Is there anyone opposed? If there is no one opposed, I declare it carried. Item 9, confirmation of minutes. 9.1, ordinary meeting of the Council, 19 May 2026. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Councillor McGoldrick and seconded Councillor Spanbrook. Is there anyone against? If there's no one against, I declare it carried. Item 9.2, Governance Committee, 9th of February 2026. Can I please have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? A mover and seconder, please. Councillor Lim, seconded. Thank you, Councillor Green. Anyone against? If there's no one against, I declare it carried. Item 9.3, notes of agenda briefing forum, 9th of June 2026. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor McGoldrick, seconded Councillor Lim. Is there anyone against? If there is no one against, I declare it carried. Item 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Item 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. The following items have been identified as having confidential attachments. That's C26391 RFQ 252657, supply of Microsoft Learning, Walga. C26395 RFT 252626, supply and installation of solar PVs and batteries at various facilities. And UP 26115 Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review, decision by a statutory planning committee. Should elected members wish to discuss the confidential attachments, the item will be held until the end of the meeting and I will call for a motion to go behind closed doors. Item 12, petitions. No petitions have been received for this evening. Item 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. We now move to en bloc items for this evening. The following items have been recommended to be carried en bloc. M2687, Common Seal, May 2026. M2688, City of Melville Policy Framework and Policy Legislation Working Group. C26391, RFQ 252657, supply of Microsoft licensing, Walga. C26395, RFT 252626, supply and installation of solar PVs and batteries at various locations. C26393, investment statements, April 2026, and C26394, schedule of accounts paid April 2026. Can I please have a mover and seconder for these items? Councillor McGoldrick, seconded Councillor Spanbrook. Is there anyone against? If there is no one against, I declare it carried. Now we're moving on to reports. Now, I just wish to raise a matter that has come up a number of times now, and that is points of order. Please note, in the meeting procedures local law, the following point of order, the following are to be recognised as valid points of order. That the discussion is a matter not before the council. That is a point of order. That a breach of these meeting procedures or code of conduct has been committed by a member. Number C, that a breach of any written law, policy or any other local law of local government has been committed by any person. Anything else is an interruption. If you are concerned about the content of the debate, you can ask for clarification after the debater has finished, from the officers. That's quite okay to do, so you can ask for clarification if you're very concerned about the content of the debate. So I'm drawing that to your attention. It's item 20.4. All right, now, as June is the end of the financial year, there are several matters that require decisions this evening to ensure we comply with our legislative obligations and the timely progress of city business. I seek your cooperation in keeping discussion and debate concise and relevant to the matter for consideration. I may need to move through the items out of order to the agenda. Please let me know if you need me to pause while you navigate through your documents. So 14, reports. The first item I'll bring forward this evening is Council Plan C26399, 2024-2034, Part B, Corporate Business Plan 2026-2030, Annual Business Review and Update. Absolute majority is required. Can I please have a mover and seconder for this recommendation? Councillor McGoldrick. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lim. Is there anyone against? Okay, so we'll open the debate. Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to open the debate?
Reserve my right not to speak. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You can't reserve your right, you just don't speak, but you wrap up the debate at the end. Thank you. So, Councillor Lim, do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak later, thank you.
Later, okay. So, Councillor Robbins, do you wish to speak against?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief and save my substantive remarks for when we get to adopting the budget, other than to say now that the council plan or the corporate business plan and the budget are inextricably linked. To support one is to support the other. Specifically, the 26-27 budget serves as year one of the financial commitment in the corporate business plan. So for those reasons and more that I'll speak about later during the budget, I won't be supporting the council plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speaker against? I'll take one more. Councillor Spanbrook.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I just want to get clarity from Councillor Robbins. So did you say that you won't be supporting this because this is dependent on the budget or with regard to that they are linked? You're quite right. Is that what you're saying? So you can't
Councillor
support this?
Robbins appears to have said that, yes.
Right, okay, thanks.
Right, there doesn't appear to be any further speakers unless somebody wants to speak for. All right, I will leave that up to Councillor Lim. Do you wish to speak now?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so really, we do need to adopt this document because if we don't, it will be in direct breach of our legislative obligations, and it will also compromise on our ability to adopt the budget as well. So I think, yeah, for me, it's an important process of the end of year, end of financial year procedures. But yeah, I won't say too much further to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to wrap up the debate? Is that a question, Councillor Spanbrook?
It is, Madam Mayor. Are you taking
Spanbrook?
anyone else again who speaks in support of it, or you've done now?
No, we're wrapping up the debate
right,
now. Councillor McGoldrick?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we'll go to the vote then. So green is supporting the officer's recommendation, red is not supporting. That is carried 9-2. Thank you. We're moving on to the next item. The next matter for consideration is adoption of the 2026-27 budget. Before we begin deliberations on the 2026-27 budget, I would like to acknowledge that this is the result of extensive work undertaken since November last year. It has been shaped through multiple workshops with elected members and informed by input from elected members through the discussion with officers. I thank elected members and officers involved for their valuable contributions. The budget before us reflects a collaboration and considered approach to meeting the needs of our community in the current economic climate, while supporting the long-term sustainability of our services and facilities now and into the future. Now, C26397, consideration of adoption of the 2026-2027 budget. Absolute majority is required. Prior to tabling the officer recommendation, I advise that Councillor Ross and Councillor York have each submitted an alternative motion with notice. The motions will be considered in that order, and if both are lost, we'll return to the officer recommendation. Councillor Ross, do you wish to proceed with your recommendation, your alternative motion?
Yes, I do.
Right, thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Wheatland. Thank you. So, Councillor Ross, please open your debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Every elected member here has promised to keep rates low. Now is the opportunity to walk the talk. This motion seeks a responsible and reasonable reduction to the 5% advertised rate. What's proposed, 4.83%, is affordable, and the budget is balanced by a small transfer from reserves. Of course, if we want to reduce our spending on items, projects that are not essential or even necessary at a time of a cost of living crisis, we can balance the budget without a transfer from reserves. So what is wrong with the 5% advertised rate? It means that the average ratepayer will be impacted by a 6.7% increase in rates, and many more will be impacted by a 13% or more increase in rates. The RBA today, Reserve Bank of Australia, did not increase or decrease interest rates. Why? Because despite growing inflation, the RBA recognized that with the end of the fuel tax reduction in 2 weeks, fuel prices for standard unleaded will be over $2.05 per litre, with premium and diesel topping $3 plus per litre. And there's also an increase in the unemployment rate. So the light at the end of the 2-week tunnel is not the end of the tunnel, but a heavily loaded goods train heading our way. Increases in fuel costs will impact the cost of all goods, including food. As representatives of the community, we must act with care and caution and not choose to spend indiscriminately and on discretionary items. We need to tighten the spending belt and understand that there are ratepayers doing it tough and every dollar counts. When we asked to be elected, we talked the talk. Now we need to walk the walk. It is our integrity that's on the line. So I ask you to support this reduction. It is not a huge reduction, but it simply will provide some breathing space for those people out there who are doing it tough. Thank you.
Councillor Wheatland, do you wish to speak now or later?
No, I'll reserve my right.
Well, I would like to speak against. Yes, I'll speak against Councillor Ross's motion. This is not simply a debate about a percentage point in the rate increase. It's a debate about whether we're prepared to fund the services, infrastructure and community facilities our residents expect, or whether we continue to spend more than we earn and draw down our reserves at an unsustainable rate. Over the past 5 years, this council has consistently drawn around $12 million per year from reserves. That means approximately $60 million has been used from reserves over that period because our budgets have not balanced. In simple terms, our community expectations and desires have exceeded our ability to raise revenue. So we've been spending more than we earn. Now, in the 6th year, Councillor Ross is proposing we draw even more from reserves than we have in the past. The figure proposed is approximately $13.77 million, and the overall impact pushes us towards taking more than $14 million from reserves. Now, that's not a small adjustment. It's a further weakening of our financial position. We have been able to manage in recent years because of our advocacy strategy has been so successful. The council has secured approximately $30 million in grant funding and support from the state and federal governments, and we sincerely appreciate that. However, we cannot build a sustainable budget on the assumption that grants will always arrive at the same level or at the right time. Very low rate increases may sound attractive, but they have consequences. If we continue to reduce income while relying heavily on reserves, we will eventually have to start planning for debt. Debt servicing will then reduce our ability to deliver future projects because money that should be going into roads, parks, community buildings and asset renewal will instead be used to pay interest and loan costs. A resident recently said to me when we were discussing the need to tighten our belt, "Does that mean you'll do minimal maintenance on club buildings and parks and reserves?" She remembered that not so long ago, that's exactly what happened. This is the practical reality of underfunding. It eventually shows up in reduced maintenance, delayed works and declining community assets. This is also a matter of intergenerational fairness. It took roughly a decade to build reserves of around 160 million. Those reserves were accumulated by ratepayers who contributed responsibly to the city, so the city would be in a strong financial position. So if we continue to spend those reserves through repeated unbalanced budgets without putting enough money back for maintenance and renewal, we're shifting the burden onto future generations. The next generation will be left to pay higher rates, take on debt or accept lower standards of service. That's not fair and it's not financially sustainable. One of the core responsibilities of an elected member is to run the council in a financially responsible and sustainable manner. Supporting a rate proposal that gives the city $205,252 less income is not responsible when we already know we are drawing heavily on reserves. That's $205,252 less income, dropping down from the officer's recommended 5%. So that means we'll be drawing heavily on reserves and struggling to meet our long-term financial commitments. It's worth reminding ourselves why council rates exist. Every dollar collected is spent in our city for our residents. Whether or not each resident personally uses every service, rates fund rubbish collection, recycling. They repair local roads, footpaths, street lighting, stormwater drainage. They maintain parks, playgrounds, sporting ovals and public toilets. They support libraries, community centres and local events. They fund bushfire prevention, local law enforcement, community safety services such as MelSafe, and the planning and development work needed to manage a growing city. We began our budget discussions at 5.5%. Elected members considered that too high and agreed to advertise a lower rate of 5%, which already represented a reduction of approximately $540,000 in revenue. Councillor Ross is now proposing a further reduction in income of $205,252. Combined, that is a significant loss of revenue for the city maintenance, renewal and project delivery. The saving for individual residents may not be substantial, but the impact on the city's ability to meet its commitments will be. We cannot pretend that reducing income has no consequences. It either means fewer services, delayed projects, reduced maintenance, more reliance on reserves or debt in the future. In 26 years, I've never been thanked for keeping rates low, not even during COVID when there were 2 years of no rate increases and $200 refund for each ratepayer 1 year. People still complained because residents rightly expect services continue, assets to be maintained and their city to function well. So the real question before us is this: are we prepared to make a decision that may sound popular tonight, but weakens the city's finances tomorrow? Or are we prepared to make the responsible decision to protect our reserves, maintain our services and plan fairly for future generations? For all those reasons, I ask elected members not to support Councillor Ross's motion. Thank you. I'll take a speaker for. Okay, Councillor Wheatland, did you speak?
No, I'm happy to go back to Councillor Ross. Thanks.
Thank you. If there's no further speakers, I will ask Councillor Ross to wrap up the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we need to understand a couple of things in terms of this $14 million transfer from reserves. It's a transfer from reserves to fund the ongoing expenses. It's a cash amount that's kept there. But at the end of this period, it's expected that much of that 14 million will be transferred back into reserves. It's only there as a float. So they expect it could possibly be that more than 14 million will be transferred back into reserves. We don't know that at this point in time. So using that figure is misleading. This intergenerational fairness, spending money on items which will only benefit people in the future, but cost people now, that's a reverse of intergenerational funding, fairness. We're being unfair to the people now when in reality, intergenerational fairness means borrowing the money so that people in the future can repay it because they are getting the benefit from it. So I think, Madam Mayor, that's been turned around the wrong way. In terms of the $5,252, the city is spending more than that, and in fact, putting the city in a position where it will have to place a burden of $4 million on future ratepayers without any consideration of how that money is being spent or any cap on that spending. That's a decision that this city has made, this council has made, which was supported by the mayor. And now we're given a lecture on how to be responsible in spending. Now, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but that's not fair, that's not correct, and that's simply misleading all of us here. Madam Mayor says she's never been thanked for keeping rates low. I don't think that was why we actually asked to be elected, so we would be thanked for keeping rates low. But we all stood up there and said we will keep rates low, regardless of whether we're thanked or not. So using that as a reason for not keeping rates low is really rather a curious reason. In the overall scheme of things, ratepayers now need some form of relief, and this will provide that relief. So it's not going to bankrupt the city. The city had $181 million in cash reserves, and those reserves are there to pay for future expenses. So they haven't been depleted as we've been told. That, to some extent, is scaremongering. So I ask you to support this motion and keep the rates low. The difference between this and the 5% recommended by the officers is minuscule in the scheme of things. Please support the motion. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, could I please ask a question?
Councillor Robbins.
Could I just query why the two alternate motions have been processed as alternate motions and not amendments?
Ms Newman, Head of Governance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. So each of the alternative motions is significantly different to what the intended officer recommendation was and required significant work. So they are substantially different to the officer recommendation.
I'd like to dissent with that ruling.
What, the Head of Governance statement? That's not a ruling.
Well, the decision's been,
I see what you mean, the alternative.
the decision's been made that they should be alternate motions, but in my view, they're pretty minor.
Well, I've not actually made a ruling. Head of Governance has made a decision according to the rules. So there's no point of dissent. The rules require a lot of discretion. The rules require a lot of discretion. Like what one person thinks is minor, the next person could say is not minor. So there's got to be a mechanism for the council as the primary decision maker. Look, Councillor, I'm not taking that as a dissent motion. It can't possibly be against the Head of Governance. It can be against my decision, but the Head of Governance has made that decision and has on a number of occasions, and that has been what we've abided by.
So just to clarify, there's no mechanism for the council to disagree with that kind of decision?
Head of Governance, Ms Newman.
I don't believe there's anything in the meetings procedures that allows for that. The alternative motions have been circulated for a while now, so I guess no one raised any concerns before this point in time.
We're going to proceed with the vote now. So can we have the vote come up on the screen? Green is if you support Councillor Ross's motion and red is if you don't. That is lost to 9. Thank you. We're now moving on to the next alternative motion, which is Councillor York's alternative motion. Councillor York, do you wish to proceed with your motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Spanbrook. Thank you. Councillor York, proceed with your debate.
Yeah, I'll keep it short because I guess it's similar to Councillor Ross's arguments, but I think the 4.9 percentage figure is based on a pretty good guideline, which is the highest rate that Perth CPI hit over the last year from post 1st of July last year. I do know it does appear that inflation's trending down, but there are still things that are quite uncertain. Advice from the officers and general advice is that a lot of the drop in recent inflation has been a result of the federal government's fuel tax being cut. So it's unclear whether that will continue or not. And I guess the point about reserves is, I mean, we did sort of hit over the last few years one of those once in 30 to 50 year infrastructure renewal periods. And that's why a lot of money in reserves was going out the door. It'd be interesting to know what our remaining shortfall is in the future to give a better idea of what reserves we should be putting away, because I don't think we should just be putting reserves away just for the point of it, just to build it for no purpose. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor York. Councillor Spanbrook, do you wish to speak now or later?
I will speak now, thank you, Madam Mayor. That with the proposed 4.9%, just to be clear, this is only 0.01% of the advertised rate of 5%. And in saying that, as what is actually even stated within the alternate motion, is that since October 25, considerable savings have been made in relation to the city's CCTV program and foreshore lighting projects, and there are likely to be additional savings to be found in the future. So in saying that, we have also workshopped this to death. We've had that many workshops on the budget, and at any time that anyone wishes to make any change or there's any discussion or about any spending or expenditure that is too much or anything similar, well then that is their opportunity to raise it, because for the city officers to actually complete this documentation is quite onerous. They have worked very hard on this, and we have been given ample opportunity to raise our concerns. So with 4.9%, as Councillor York just stated, it was recently I think it was the first quarter, the CPI was 4.9%, which that's what we're looking at now. So therefore, it does match that. And at the moment, it is looking like that the inflation may decline. However, that they're listening to economists recently that they are still wavering, that it could still go up with increase in budget, with increase in interest rates. So I do support this, and I do hope that other councillors support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Spanbrook. I would like to speak against it. I'm disappointed that this alternative motion has been brought forward because it presents a cosmetic reduction while creating a very real financial problem for the council. At a time when we already have an extensive list of projects and services to fund this year and next year, this is not financially responsible. We've already reduced our advertised rate increase from 5.5%, which represents a reduction in rates of approximately $540,000. Reducing the rate further from 5% to 4.9% would mean another reduction in revenue of approximately $113,000. Those supporting this motion need to explain exactly where this money will come from. It's not enough to make a budget look politically convenient tonight and leave officers and services and residents to deal with the consequences later. There appears to be an idea that council can behave like a supermarket and make 4.9 sound more attractive than 5%. Council is not selling a discount product. We're funding roads, parks, footpaths, libraries, waste services, sporting facilities, and the infrastructure our residents rely on every day. If we choose this path, we should be honest about what follows. Officers will eventually have to come back and tell us which projects are being delayed, which services are under pressure, and which priorities must be pushed aside. In fact, tonight we already have an agenda item, UP 26115, Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review, which, if supported, will create another unfunded project of approximately $200,000 plus. I door knocked in nearly every ward to speak with residents about a 5% rate increase because that is the rate council advertised. I knocked on more than 150 doors and spoke with more than half of those residents. They were very happy with the council's parks, streets, footpaths, waste removals, libraries, sporting opportunities and other services. They were also comfortable with the 5% increase, which reflects council's approximately 80% satisfaction rating on its surveys. Councillor York and I were at the $1.3 million change room opening at Corunda Oval last week, where a very involved sports club resident volunteered that he was very happy with council and would willingly pay 5% rate increase. No one will thank us for reducing the rate from 5 to 4.9%. It's too small to make a meaningful difference to most households, but large enough to damage the council's budget. What residents will remember is not the 0.1 reduction. They will remember if their services decline, if projects are delayed, and if council fails to deliver what it promised. I also remind elected members that council has already lost approximately $100,000 per year in income from the development of Morrow Mews, following the demolition of the commercial building and 3 residential houses, as well as the removal of paid parking. Residents will now have to pay the cost of the park development and maintenance. Now, as council reserves plummet, we will also lose income from interest. That means the costs do not disappear. They are simply shifted onto residents later, often with fewer choices and more pressure. And yes, reserves go up and down, but they have consistently gone down from 160 million to about 100 million. So it has definitely gone down. For these reasons, I urge elected members to reject Councillor York's alternative motion. It may sound attractive in the chamber tonight, but it is not responsible, it is not sustainable, and it is not in the long-term interests of our residents. Thank you. I'll take a speaker 4 now. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just start with a couple of comments about things that have been said already. I think Councillor York made it pretty clear that the 4.9% figure that he came, in his mind at least, and certainly in mine speaking for this motion, was not a supermarket discount. It was reflective of the peak inflation figure that we have experienced in this state in the last few months. I've expressed previously that I believe that we had a figure of 4.5% in the long-term financial plan last year. This is higher than that. That does reflect the inflation spike that we have seen. But I think because we have a long-term financial plan, I think we need to be using that as a mechanism to smooth things over for ratepayers, and therefore I think 4.9% is an appropriate number. I believe it is also the same number as some other councils have adopted. So if we want to talk about optics rather than supermarket discounts, it does show that we're sitting at a level comparable to other cities such as Fremantle, I believe. Having said all that, the other thing I was going to say was that I don't think a change from 5% to 4.9 can't be a significant impact on the budget and cosmetic. It's got to be one or the other. So I think it is relatively minor figure, but certainly something to consider. I will concur with Madam Mayor about concerns about eating into our reserves. I certainly do have those concerns as well, but I also have concerns that we appear to be heading down a path where we want to set rates higher than inflation every year, which is basically meaning that that we're hitting the ratepayers up for our increased spending every time, rather than trying to rationalise our decisions on spending on the budget. I think we need to put pressure on ourselves by not just lifting the rates every time we need a bit of extra money. So I guess that's it. The only other thing I will say is that I do have concerns about eating into reserves, but I believe that it is something we can speak to residents about when they have their concerns about their rate bill going up. I think we've heard some incorrect figures about average rate rises. The average rate rise for a developed property is exactly the rate rise that we are raising today, 4.9%, if this motion gets up. But by eating into our reserves, we can at least say to people that do have concerns about the cost of living that we are shouldering that to some extent. So from a combination of smoothing things out, shouldering impacts for spikes in inflation, and for some people adverse changes due to GRV, I believe 4.9% is a well-balanced number to go forward. And the task from here, if this motion gets up, is to really have a look at our spending and see what we can do to try and get next year's budget down so that we're not eating into reserves as much. Thank you.
A speaker for? Oh, sorry, a speaker against? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. Look, I acknowledge I was actually going to speak for this motion. I was going to speak for Councillor Ross's motion as well, but sorry, Councillor Ross, when you spoke about intergenerational funding and spending being reversed, I think I understood it to be that you said we need to reverse the theory of saving now for future generations, and you said we need to flip it. So I think the young people across the city of Melville would not agree with that, and future residents and ratepayers of the city would not appreciate that either, but with all respect. I think in light of many things that we do as a council with our decision making, that we need to be consistent, and we need to actually, I think, moving forward after whatever we land on tonight, that in the next financial year, I think us as a council, we need to get down and embed down what we want, fair and equitable spending across the city. We can't make decisions ad hoc. We can't just make decisions that are unplanned or unbudgeted. We need to do our long-term financial plan. We need to do our ARIS, our infrastructure strategy, and we need to consider things like roads and footpaths as well, which are lacking across the city. So even though it's just a 1% difference between 4.9 and 5, like what the Mayor said, it consistently eats away at projects across the city, and not just big ticket items like the FOGO bins or the saving of the Scout Hall or the extension of the Oval that we made decisions on. This eats away at services. Just the other day, Councillor McGoldrick and I got an email from a mum that attends the Willagee Library with her young babies. It's a full service, and they were told, incorrectly, after we followed it up, that that service was finishing because there was no money in the budget. The services were being looked at and they were being adjusted. And at the coalface, our residents and ratepayers that use these services so well, and like they use it to help with the cost of living crisis that we have at the moment. They use it to help manage their budget. And luckily, it was a miscommunication, and those mums and those babies get to go to this rhyme time consistently now into the future. I really think to cut services is not the right way to do it. We need to get our decision making right. We need to, we need to stick with our strategies that we endorse and we support that are sitting there on the shelf doing nothing, because these other projects come in and they jump over the top of them. We've got a youth strategy that's identified the need for a youth centre. We've got a netball needs plan and assessment, may I say, that has identified stuff across the city that netball is lacking in infrastructure. We have the change room upgrades, which are progressing, but we're still not through them yet because our decision making stalls the process. So with respect, I can't support this 4.9%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Have I got many more speakers against? Because then I'll take another speaker for. Okay, speaker 4. Okay, I'll take another speaker against. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to start off by thanking the staff for all their efforts throughout this process, and I agree with the Mayor that it has been a well-conducted, thorough and rigorous process. But I'd also comment that just because the budget has been through many iterations on a lot of discussion doesn't mean that we've all agreed along the way. And the issues that I have with the budget remain, and as such I won't be supporting it. I'd also like to put it on the record that if this had been an amendment to go to 4.9%, I would have supported it, but unfortunately I can't support the budget as a whole. So given that it's an alternate motion, I'm speaking against. Now, this year, as we all know, is a GRV revaluation year, and that complicates the rates discussion significantly. So we're looking here at a 4.9% increase. But the reason I can't support the budget is because, in my view, there's still many necessary projects. And when I know that the rates hit to some of the suburbs will be significant, I just can't support that. So as we've seen through the information that has been sent through, we actually have a couple of suburbs that are going to that will experience a rates decrease. So in Brentwood and Palmyra, those people will likely receive a decrease in their rates, and that's fantastic for people living in those suburbs. But unfortunately, for a lot of the people in the suburbs that Councillor Hong and I represent, in Bateman and Cardinia and Murdoch, they're looking at a 13% rate increase. So it may be 4.9 on paper, that's an average, but we're looking at 13% for some of the people that live in our suburbs. And if I thought that every project that we were looking to spend money on was, a good idea and a good investment of ratepayer funds, then, I could probably reluctantly agree. But unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. We've got a capital works budget with a $44 million price tag. Some of the biggest projects, I'm glad are in there. $1.5 million on a change room upgrade at Troy Park, fantastic. $1 million on new footpaths, fabulous. Some of the spending are things we just have to do, not particularly exciting, but we've got an obligation. $1.2 million on various irrigation and bore renewal projects, $1.8 million on fleet replacement, $7.3 million on road rehabilitation and resurfacing projects. All of those, great. But there are a few projects in there that I don't think are a good use of ratepayer funds. Approximately $9.5 million on a library and cultural centre, approximately $1.8 million on a shelter and welcome area, car park, path and furniture at the Heathcote Lower Lands, $4.5 million on the development of the Morrow Mews Town Square. At a Walga course yesterday, there was a bit of discussion about rates, and the argument was made by a few of the elected members there that, people are complaining that their household expenses are going up and that a rate increase just makes that worse. And the comment was made by the people in the room, elected members, that, You know, it's the same for local government. Our costs are going up as well, and that's why we have to increase rates. Now, I understand that argument, and it has some merit, but the biggest flaw with that argument is that a lot of households have already tightened their belts as much as they can. They've cut spending on things they don't need to be spending money on. But as a local government, I don't think we've done that. There's still a lot more that we can be doing to save money and create efficiencies. Comments were made earlier by the Mayor that if we don't increase rates by what's recommended, we'll need to keep dipping into reserves until there's no money left. In my view, that's misleading. We all know that current spending can be reduced. It's not a matter of keep dipping into our savings, it's a matter of finding efficiencies, cutting the projects that are nice to haves and that might be a great idea when the economy's all going well and everyone's got lots of money, but that's not the case at the moment. I don't think it's responsible to continue with them. Just like to read a couple of comments that that a couple of people have made on social media, City of Melville residents and ratepayers, I assume. One of them, it's time for the City of Melville to start behaving like a business and increase efficiencies while cutting expenses. Another one, it's time for a productivity review within the City of Melville. Anything above inflation is bad news, and the excuse the council is more costly to operate is no excuse. Back to basics, back to essential rates, roads, rubbish. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The number one thing that people talk to me about is that they want lower rates. And I've heard other EMs tell stories about people complaining about rates, and then when they ask them, oh, what services would you like us to cut? People don't have an answer, and we've heard a couple of similar anecdotes here this evening. I think the reason that they don't have an answer to that question, what would you like us to cut, is because they don't know some of the things that we're spending money on. If we told them that we're building a $60 million library or a $5 million cricket pitch or spending millions of dollars on single parks, and that's not even for the land, it's just for the gardens and the benches and the playgrounds, then I'm sure they'd be very quick to tell you that those are some of the things that we could be cutting. So for those reasons, I can't support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. All right, I'll go back to Councillor York to wrap up the debate.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I mean, I do note in the written reasons that, you know, we did save 1.5 million or so on the CCTV program, but we're still spending about $1 million. We do have a grant in relation to that, but, you know, that was a substantial expansion of the role of local government, particularly in regards to unmeans tested private subsidies of people buying CCTV. There is an item on the agenda tonight that substantially expands the role of local government as well, which at the lower end more than, if we weren't to proceed with that, more than covers the 0.1% I'm putting forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote. If you agree with Councillor York's recommendation for 4.9%, vote green. If you do not agree, vote red. That is carried 7-4 with an absolute majority. Thank you. Now we're moving on to the next item. The next item is M2689, Annual Review of Statutory Delegations and Authorisations 2026. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Hong, seconded Councillor McGoldrick. Is there anyone against? If there is no one against, I declare it carried. Next item, UP 26115, Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review, decision by Statutory Planning Committee. Before we table the officer recommendation, I remind elected members that there are confidential attachments associated with this item. If elected members wish to discuss the contents of these attachments, I will hold this item to the end of the meeting so we can go behind closed doors. Does anyone wish to discuss the confidential attachments? All right, then we'll proceed. We have an officer recommendation. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Wheatland and seconder Councillor McGoldrick. Councillor Wheatland, is there anyone who wishes to speak against this? Councillor Ross, you do?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a deferral motion.
A deferral motion. Do you have a seconder? Oh, hang on. We may need to check that with Mr. Varelis. So, Director Varelis, Planning, can you please advise us if this is possible?
Through the Chair, thank you for your question. I'll need a moment just to reference some dates and count back 28 days to ensure the City maintains its appeal period.
Perhaps, do you need a few minutes to do that? Because we can move on to the next item and then come back to you.
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, M2690, Appointment to Act, Absence of Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Spanbrook, seconder Councillor McGoldrick. Is there anyone against? If there is no one against, I declare it carried. Moving on to C26396, Land Optimisation Strategy. Prior to tabling this item, I advise that an amendment has been received from Councillor Robbins. Before we consider the amendment, I need a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation. Can I have a mover, please? Land Optimisation, Councillor McGoldrick. And seconded, Councillor Spanbrook. Okay, Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to open the debate?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
No. Councillor Robbins, do you wish to proceed with your amendment? You do. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Hong. Thank you. Councillor Robbins, proceed with your debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd just like to start by congratulating the staff on their work with this and speaking briefly about how pleased I am to be at this point. Last ordinary meeting of council, we adopted the alternate revenue plan, and this strategy is, I guess, the next step along in that process, the land optimisation strategy. I'm very excited about the opportunities that this could present us with. I think as a council, we've talked a lot about finding alternative revenue streams, and obviously land optimisation is one of the ways that we can diversify our revenue streams and hopefully in future years reduce the reliance on rates. And yes, it's not a silver bullet. There are a lot of things that we need to be doing right as an organisation to get the best outcome for our ratepayers, but it's definitely a piece in the puzzle towards putting ourselves in the best possible financial position. My amendment is quite simple. All it seeks to do is to remove the caps that currently exist in the strategy. At the moment, there is mention in the strategy of essentially what I've coined a soft cap and a hard cap. So essentially says that the officers will only or will look favourably upon land sales of less than $10 million, or sorry, acquisitions of less than $10 million, and perhaps going up to 15 in certain circumstances. All this amendment attempts to do is just to remove those dollar values. And the reason why I'd like to move this amendment is because I think it's just a lot, it just essentially will remove any hurdles if we were to find a fantastic opportunity. And it may never come into play. We may never consider anything more than $10 million, and this could be completely redundant, but there is always the possibility that our staff will find a great opportunity and they'll need to move quickly to bring it to us as a council. So I guess I just want to make it clear to the officers that we're happy for them to bring anything to us. There doesn't need to be sort of a cap on it. They can bring anything to us and we'll consider it. So I just feel that removing those couple of caps provides us the greatest opportunity to consider all options that may arise in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Is there any speaker against? Is there anyone against this amendment? If there's nobody against this amendment, I declare it carried. We're now on to the substantive motion. Is there anyone against the substantive motion as amended with Councillor Robbins' amendment? If there's no one against the substantive motion, I now declare it carried. Continue with the other one? Okay, we can now go back to UP 26115, Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review, decision by Statutory Planning Committee. Yes, Councillor Ross, you did move a deferral for this particular item. We said we need to provide you with some information first. So am I asking Director Varellis, Planning? Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you. The notification to the city came last week with regards to the SPC decision for the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. The city has 28 days from the date of that letter to provide an appeal to the State Administrative Tribunal. That would bring us to the 10th of July. There is the prospect of seeking further time at the first directions hearing if a late submission for appeal is provided. However, that's not guaranteed, and I wouldn't recommend that council take that risk if that's the path that it wants to go down. So a special council meeting would need to be held before the 10th of July if we were to defer the item to ensure that we meet the 28-day appeal period. And if council want to discuss the merits of the review, the item will have to go behind closed door.
So the upshot of deferral means we'll have to call a special meeting. So does anybody wish to second the deferral? You wish to second the deferral even if there has to be a special meeting called? Okay, Councillor Lim has seconded the deferral motion. Councillor Ross, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The reason for seeking a deferral and in light of there also having to be a special meeting of council is that this has come with very late notice before council. I don't know if everyone's had the chance to really read it and properly digest it and consider all the ramifications of the decision. And furthermore, there has been a number of community members that have been very closely involved in this matter, and I believe that the community needs to be given the opportunity to, voice their concerns, if any, to the council before it makes a final decision as to whether to accept this and lock in all these conditions, or whether to move down the road of an appeal. We can't give it this proper consideration on the run, and we're currently seeking to do that. I don't wish to debate the merits, but looking at the officer's report, virtually at every point they've said there's scope for review, and that to me is their considered opinion that there is reason to review the decision that's been made. They haven't said there's no scope for review. So the vast majority of those things that have been disallowed, there is scope for review. And I think we need to give the community the opportunity to comment before we make a decision that locks us in for the next 10 years. And that's the basic reason for asking for a deferral. And that, it's in the community's interest. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to the vote now.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question just on what Councillor Ross said about the stakeholders that have been involved in this along the way. We know there's the community reference group and other key stakeholders, but have they not participated along the way with DPLH and the planners and been consulted along the way? And have they seen this result and were they consulted on it? So I'm pretty sure. Thank you.
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Wheatland. Elected members have been kept informed of this process through the elected member bulletin, and confidential information has been shared throughout May. The community reference group were provided the information as part of the public release of the report from the Statutory Planning Committee of the West Australian Planning Commission. It's our understanding that a written submission was provided by the community reference group to the Statutory Planning Committee, and the city also provided a written deputation to the Statutory Planning Committee as well. So they have been involved in terms of the Statutory Planning Committee decision. They were also consulted by the Department of Planning throughout the assessment process by the Department of Planning at a number of points, and they've also had close engagement with the city in terms of the further information that's been provided to the Department of Planning that has ultimately fed into the information that has arrived at their decision.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. And when we received this report, did they get provided a copy, or the community reference group, please?
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, the item was released on the public agenda. We didn't provide a specific copy to the community reference group, but it was publicly available.
Thank you. Is that a question?
Yeah.
Councillor Green.
I was just looking for some clarification around the appeal. The mechanics of appealing. Is it, does an appeal have to have a specific council resolution to appeal the decision, or on the basis of a deferral, can city officers or the CEO perhaps appeal on the basis that we have deferred the decision, if you understand what I mean?
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Green. A matter of this magnitude would require a council resolution. It's good governance to do so.
Thank you.
Question, Councillor Spanbrook.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, to Director Varelis. So just a question on the Statutory Planning Committee. If there is an appeal, then could that committee change from what made the decision initially?
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. Under an appeals scenario, the State Administrative Tribunal replaces the Statutory Planning Committee as the decision maker. So, through the process, there may be an opportunity through mediation to have the matter referred back to the Statutory Planning Committee. However, that's not necessarily fait accompli. If it does go through to a full hearing, the decision maker is replaced by the Statutory Planning Committee by the State Administrative Tribunal.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no costs associated with this. So if, with regard to appealing, from, perhaps you've got empirical evidence what we could expect to have to pay for this?
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, the council report has financial implications where it estimates approximately $200,000 to fully undertake an appeal. That would be going to a full hearing, and that is an estimate at this point in time because it really depends on what points we're going into appeal on, the technical expertise that's required to support that appeal, and the complexity of the appeal, given that there would also need to be legal representation because the West Australian Planning Commission would be represented by the State Solicitor's Office. The city would have to have legal representation through the process. So it would be legal representation coupled with technical expertise to justify the positions.
And Director Varellis, can you please confirm the amount of time you think it would take to have an appeal if we got involved in the appeal?
Through the chair, thank you, Madam Mayor. Approximately 12 to 18 months would be the time frame running through to a full hearing.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Varellis, are you aware of any other local governments that perhaps have gone through the same process as this? And if so, do you have any outcomes of them by any chance?
Are you asking if they're successful outcomes?
Or successful or not so one or the other, thanks.
Thank you. Director Varellis.
Through the chair, over the years there have been local governments that have taken the Planning Commission to appeal. It really depends on the matter, so you're not comparing apples with apples. Each case is different and needs to be considered on its merits and the particulars of the appeal. Each local government's had mixed outcomes as a result of those processes. But like I said, they are different matters in different localities with different circumstances, and each needs to be considered separately.
Okay, we're back to the deferral motion. The deferral motion means that a special meeting of council will have to be called to consider this matter if we defer it. Okay, so we're going to the vote now. So green is agreeing with the deferral and red is not agreeing. And that is lost 5-6. We're now back to the substantive motion. Okay, so we're moving on to any speaker against. Oh, you should have opened the debate a bit earlier, but anyway, that's okay. We'll do it now. Thank you, Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. Look, so this has been a very long process to get to this point. We undertook this review. Hang on, I'm going to pull this closer. Bear with me. We undertook this review because the community raised real concerns about height, about bulk, about bonus height, about transition to surrounding residential areas, traffic, parking, landscaping, and whether community benefits were delivering any meaningful outcomes. We were dealing with mezzanine floors that weren't mezzanine floors. We were dealing with community confusion, stranded assets, and this decision hasn't given us what we asked for in that decision in 1923, I was going to say, in 2023. It doesn't remove the bonus heights. It doesn't remove the M15 precinct. It doesn't remove the southern boundary area. It doesn't support all of our preferred setback, lot size, deep soil or landscaping controls. It's not a full endorsement of our preferred position, but it does deliver some good improvements, some good practical improvements. The plot ratio controls is important. Whilst it wasn't what we wanted, there is still a reduction in them. The reduction of development intensity on the western side of Forbes Road is important. Visitor parking requirements are also important, and additional interface protections for adjoining residential properties are important. Recognition of future public open space locations, which we did the heavy lifting on anyway, that's also been recognised. There are no insignificant these aren't insignificant changes. They just give a more structured framework than the one that we currently have. Our decision tonight is not whether this decision is perfect. Clearly, there will be people in the community that are quite distressed about this outcome. But the question is now whether we should move into the implementation or spend further time and more money pursuing a SAT review with an uncertain outcome. It's been 3 years in the making to get to this point, And I think what we were advised back in 2023 about the removal of the bonus heights and the removal of the M15 area was that we were told that it wasn't going to get through. And here we are 3 years later, $1 million later, and we've got that outcome. Like Director Varellis just said that when you consider the technical and legal costs, it could take 12 to 18 months. We've spent approximately $836,000 and another $200 would put it in the $1 million mark. I think we've actually spent a lot more. Accepting this officer recommendation doesn't mean we're saying that the SPC decision is ideal. It just means we are moving forward to review the implementation. So, look, I think it's important for this reiteration of Canning Bridge. This started in 2018, I think, when we had the approval of, just before we got, I got elected on council, there was the approval of the two 30-storey towers in Forbes Road. And that's when the community started to kick up. The community deserves to know which recommendations were supported, which were partly supported, and which were rejected by the state. So we shouldn't overstate this outcome. It's not a targeted improvement. It's not what we wanted, but what we need to do is to celebrate what we've gained and to implement the changes and keep advocating for better outcomes to ensure that we get real community benefits. We get a real community benefit framework that is meaningful, transparent, accountable, and it gives back to the future residents, current and future residents and ratepayers of the City of Melville. So for those reasons, I support this recommendation. Thanks.
Just a question to Director Varellis. Has this item been budgeted for in the budget we just passed? And if not, where would the money come from? It's 200,000 plus. It's a bit of an open check because we don't really know the true cost. Pardon? Yeah, if we can test it, yeah.
Through the
Director
Chair.
Varellis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The forecast expenditure for a potential review has not been budgeted for. However, the City has budgeted approximately $120,000 to undertake the modifications and the technical studies that are required to implement the activity centre plan.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to speak now or later?
Thank you. Later, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm speaking against this motion because, following on from the failed deferral motion, I think we have failed to understand a few things. Firstly, the review of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre was a statutory requirement. It wasn't because of pressure from the community, but community pressures have been there in terms of disappointment with the way the plan was structured in the first place. One of the things that the city did was to employ a consultant who, rather than looking at the built form and making recommendations, then chose an area and recommended 15 plus in that area, which was previously zoned 15 stories. Now, one of the outcomes of this is that the committee has approved the 15 plus, which puts a height cap of 30-storey buildings in a small area of land bounded by Canning Highway, Kishon Road and Forbes. It's about 14,000 square metres, which will allow the construction of 10 30-storey buildings, which have no outlet on Canning Highway, have no outlet on Forbes Road because it's too small, too close to the lights, and can only have, with over 1,500 dwellings on that site, if fully built, will only have an exit onto Kishon Road, and which will be choked at Kintail, Moray Mews, and Forbes. So this is where the overall planning and the requirement or the obligation of the city to look at what's good planning for the area and what is complete over-densification. So that's the reason for not wanting the city to simply accept this and see it as being actually an improvement. It's not. It's a huge step backwards, and it's only when we take a very closer view of what is being proposed and what has been rejected that we would start to understand. The rejection of the southern boundary is the reason for wanting the southern boundary moved was so that the people living on the boundary in R20 zones wouldn't have a 10-meter high podium wall built on their boundary, right next to them. Now, there's examples of that already out there, where people are living in permanent shadow once those walls have been built. And that was the reason for it. The reason was shift the boundary to across the road. It didn't reduce the capacity of Canning Bridge Activity Centre to meet its requirements in terms of density, but it was there to help the community. And the community came out and voted for it. And that's been rejected. So along the way, what was proposed was actually real improvements. The request for increased side setbacks was to provide green corridors between the buildings. Again, that's been rejected. So all we're going to get is 30-story towers with wind tunnels between them that are going to be an eyesore. And it's really about the city considering whether this is good planning or whether we just go ahead and allow the destruction of the area. It doesn't affect me personally. It's not about me living in Applecross. It's about what's a good planning outcome. And what's being proposed here is not a good planning outcome. We have currently areas, community benefits in Forbes Road that haven't been made available to the public for over 3 years. It's just sitting there, vacant. So we've got to look at how the city is managing these assets and what benefit the community is receiving before we pack it full of density. And traffic can't move down Kintail Road, it can't move down Canning Highway even at the moment. So to simply roll over and accept this is, I think, the wrong decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Speaker 4. I'll take another one against. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I agree with a lot of what Councillor Wheatland has mentioned as well. Like the changes that you know the State Planning Commission actually considered and around Forbes Road, downzoning from 8 stories to 4, plot ratio caps, visitors parking. I think that's money well spent, in my opinion. Like the $800 over $1,000 that we sort of gone through the process to achieve this benefits. To me, it's worth it because we don't really get a second chance at this, because once this is approved, it's formalized for decades. So we all have to bear by that consequence. And we have appointed, consultants to review, the contribution as well. And when we looked at it, it was for 40% bonus height. It was very clear that there is, the developers are, earning a good portion of money, even if the percentages were between the range of 5 to 10%. It was quite a while ago because, and it's very technical, so I don't quite remember the figures, but I just know that it was significantly larger than the 3% that's proposed by the SPC. So to me, I think really we just have to bring that to the test in SAT we have to showcase that the loss in local amenity is greater than the strategic state, decision of trying to achieve arbitrary number of 14,000 dwellings. I think this has a lot more science, a lot more residents' feedback and consultation incorporated with it. It's something that I feel that we haven't quite reached the end of this chapter. I do think there's one more fight left to go. And yeah, I just think that also there hasn't been a lot of time for everyone to wrap their head around it, because this is such a complicated topic. And when I just look quickly at the WAPC as well website, there's only an agenda and a video, but the minutes hasn't even been released yet. So to me, I think, that there's a lot more work to be done here, and I don't believe it's over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to speak now?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wheatland, can you wrap up the debate, please?
Yep, thank you. Look, I'll be brief, and I acknowledge that I failed to mention the statutory requirement, but yes, there still was a lot of community angst about it, as we all know. I just want to touch on traffic density and the impact of traffic in this area. It is a target area by the state government to achieve a certain amount of density and to help the state government reach their density requirements. But, the reason why this area has been chosen as an ACP is because of its location to public transport. Dare I say, there is a bus port potentially not located in the best location, but quite close to the area. There will be a new ferry service operating out of there in the next however months. Metronet on the Swan, and access to public transport that travel along Canning Highway and along Leach Highway through the train. Along Leach Highway, along the train network. We talk about this is not good planning, but we've done a lot in respect to consulting with the community. I think the process that we went through with the community from back 2020, I think, to now has been extensive. It's been really targeted. We developed a community reference group, bringing in some key people from the community that were affected, but also that had skills from their professional life to come in and work with the city and the planning, what do you call them? Consultants on this. So, look, I think moving forward there's still opportunity to advocate and to work on some of those points that you raised, Councillor Ross, and I don't think that this is anywhere near over, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge the wins that we have got in this document and move forward together with the community. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Okay, we're going to the vote now. Green means you agree with the officer's recommendation, and red means you do not. That is carried 7-4. Okay, we're moving on to the next item. The C26390 Policy Review, CP005 Strategic Land Management.
Madam Mayor, if I may?
Councillor Wheatland.
We've got members of the public here waiting to hear the trees on private or the regulated trees. Is there any way
that is the next one.
We can move it up ahead of this
It is the
one?
next one after this. It is the next one.
So there's no, we can't move it ahead?
Not really, no.
Okay, thank you.
I did advise them at the beginning
Yeah,
of the
I know.
meeting.
I just thought I'd ask.
All right, can I please have a mover and seconder? This will go faster if we have a mover and seconder. Thank you. Councillor Green, seconded Councillor Robbins. Is there anyone speaking against? If no one is against, I declare it carried. We're now on to item UP 26114, proposed draft local planning policy, regulated trees on private land. So we have, prior to tabling the officer recommendation, I advise that the following submissions have been received from elected members in relation to the item. An alternative motion with notice from Councillor McGoldrick, an amendment to Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion from Councillor York, an alternative motion without notice from Councillor Wheatland. So additionally, an officer advice note was distributed on Friday last week to advise of amendment to the officer recommendation on Monday, 15th of June. An officer advice note was distributed in relation to Councillor Wheatland's alternative motion without notice. We will consider the motions in the following order: Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion, Councillor York's amendment. If Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion with or without the amendment is lost, we'll move to the officer's recommendation. If the officer recommendation is lost, we will move to Councillor Wheatland's alternative motion without notice. Okay, so Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to proceed with your motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor York. Oh, sorry, Councillor York, you can't be. Councillor Hong. Sorry. Oh. We're trying to get a motion on the table first, then I'll take questions. So we have Councillor McGoldrick and we need a seconder. Councillor Robbins. Thank you. Councillor McGoldrick, do you wish to speak to this motion? Can you open the debate?
Thank you. Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight we're talking about trees on private land, and we all love trees, and it's one of the reasons why we choose to live in the city of Melville with its beautiful parks, tree-lined and shady streets. And we all wholeheartedly agree with the benefits of trees for cooling, canopy, as well as encouraging animal life. However, I've listened to the community and their message is clear. They do not agree with this council regulating trees on privately owned land. I wish to outline 3 reasons why the community disagree with the proposed policy to regulate trees. Firstly, it's unfair to families. Secondly, it's an unreasonable spend for ratepayers to fund implementing this policy. And thirdly, it's unnecessary because we already have a sound planning system that encourages sustainable development. Firstly, this policy is unfair to our people. A retired resident, Wendy, contacted me and told me that she feels that this proposed policy is grossly unfair. Wendy planted a tree in her garden many years ago when they built their home. She's loved this tree, she's watered this tree, she's cared for this tree. And she also spends money on a arborist to trim the leaves and limbs when it needs and to benefit the neighbours. She is a wonderful lady and it's costing her $2,000 a year to trim her tree. She's now in her 80s and she's worried that if her circumstances change and she would like to either remove or significantly trim back her tree, she will be required to adore and apply for council development application, an expensive arborist report, the payment of application fees and a waiting period before any tree damaging activity can be done on her beloved tree. Do we really think Wendy is a tree vandal? I also heard from a family who want to put in a pool one day. Lovely family, working hard, doing the right thing, volunteering in the community, and they're really looking forward, saving up to put a pool in their backyard. And Kate asked me, she goes, do you think we'll be able to put a pool in if there's a tree in the way? And I said, I really don't know. Another person said to me, what if I want to reduce the size of my tree to address legitimate concerns? The risk of injury from falling honky nuts and other tree debris, slippery surfaces caused by fallen foliage, ongoing maintenance costs, overhanging branches, property damage such as tree roots lifting pavers or driveway, and possible insurance premiums increases. It's particularly unfair to residents who already act responsibly and take proper care of their trees. Secondly, implementing the policy would be an unreasonable use of ratepayers' funds to create a regulation and assessment burden. This policy will not only impact ratepayers like Wendy and Kate, but also impact all of us, as our rates, more broadly, will be ultimately used to fund additional staff resourcing required to administer the policy. The officer's report identifies this creates a new council service requiring 2 FTE staff at $200K a year. And it's unclear how much compliance and enforcement will cost, let alone the inevitable appeals to the State Administrative Tribunal that will take resources away from core services. Officers themselves acknowledge the complexity of implementation, compliance and enforcement, and these are not minor matters. They're all built into the report's own financial implications. And thirdly, this is unnecessary regulation of private land. It's overreach, particularly given that most landowners who will be impacted have had no say in their proposal. In the recent Trees on Your Land project engagement process, provided limited response. Approximately 99% of landowners have not yet had their say on the proposal to regulate trees on private land. Given the results from the engagement, less than 1% of the city of the population. That's not the evidence base on which to regulate what every Melville landowner can do on their own land. Also, the planning and development framework already adequately deal with landscaping as a fundamental design consideration. The most powerful thing this council can do for canopy is lead by example. Plant on our own land, invest in our verge programs and make Melville's public spaces as green and shaded as they can be. I commend this alternative motion, not as a retreat from our canopy values, but as an honest response to the community we serve. Melville's trees matter, and so do Melville landowners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGoldrick. Now, I recall that Councillor Hong had a question. Please ask your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the officers, for the public consultation, will the city be asking residents specific questions such as whether the residents support or oppose the proposed policy, or will the draft policy simply be released for review with an opportunity for people to provide comments and feedback? Thank you.
Director Varela, Planning.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Hong. We take that feedback on board, and as part of the engagement process, we can formulate questions that are simplistic in terms of yes and no answers to assist council having full information in making a determination for final adoption or otherwise.
All right, thank you. Now, Councillor Robbins, you're the seconder. Would you like to speak now or later?
Yes, I'll speak now. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations to Councillor McGoldrick on a fantastic speech. To kick off, I understand that this is a contentious topic for good reason. I think that there's strong arguments on both sides. And just to put it on the record in case we don't get to it, I'm not entirely opposed to Councillor Wheatland's alternate motion. I'm just worried about advertising 2 policies at once and the confusion that that could cause out in the community. I'm supporting this alternate motion because I believe that residents should have the ultimate decision about what happens on their land. One of the biggest issues for me here is that as a council, we voted against mandatory verge trees. At the December 2025 council meeting, an amendment was moved to our trees on city managed land policy to implement compulsory verge trees. So this means that the city would go and plant trees on people's verges regardless of whether they wanted one or not. That amendment lost 4-7. So if we're looking at preserving or increasing our tree canopy, we need to start in our own backyard. Before we start telling people what they can and can't do with property that they own, we need to be doing what we can with our own land to increase the tree canopy. I put to you, my fellow elected members, that it's a complete double standard for us to say on one hand that we're not going to use our land, council verges, to increase our urban canopy, but we will instead come after your land, the land that you own, and expect you to do it with yours. That's not appropriate and it's not fair. And it'll be very interesting to see if any of the elected members who voted no to verge trees vote against this alternate motion this evening. I'll finish by reading out some comments from Mr Max Fitzgibbon, with his permission. I support the retention of trees where practicable, as I'm sure you all do. I also support the alternative motion with notice, which seeks to not involve the city in what are personal rights of landowners to manage their properties with respect to tree maintenance and retention. Our home is our castle, and local government should not be taking their proposed intrusive policy action with trees on private property, in my view. The vast majority of landowners in Melville are responsible people. City priority with ratepayer funding should focus on the 3 Rs. Thank you.
Now I'll move to Councillor York's amendment. Councillor York, do you wish to proceed with your amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Spanbrook. Thank you, Councillor York. Can you please open your debate?
Am I going to get an opportunity later on to speak to the full alternate motion?
Yes, you can speak to your amendment, then you'll have an opportunity to speak to the substantive motion. Councillor Wheatland, do you have a question?
Just a question. Can you not go to the mover and the seconder of the motion to see if they accept the amendment?
Yes, I can. It depends on whether the rest of the table is happy to. The mover of the motion, Councillor McGoldrick, are you happy to accept Councillor York's
yes,
amendment?
Madam Mayor. Yes.
You are. And Councillor Robbins, are you prepared to accept it? Yes, can we see it on the screen? Oh. Well, actually, strictly speaking, since we have a seconder, this should have really been asked before the seconder agreed, and then we could include it, but now we've got a seconder, we should really proceed with the debate. That is the advice I've received. I think that is correct. So we will debate this. Is there anyone against this amendment? Anyone against the amendment? Councillor Ross, are you? Am I looking at hands that are against the amendment? Yes, I am. Okay, so Councillor Robbins, you finished your... Oh, sorry, we've got Councillor Spanbrook. Do you wish to speak now or later? Oh, hang on. Councillor York, you should speak now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I just think it's, it's a very vexed issue. I mean, it's almost a 50-50 issue out there in the community from what I can see, and that's apparent even in our own survey where there was, there's been a lot of commentary that there's overwhelming support for tree policy, but in our own survey it was under 50% for the actual specific questions about having a significant tree register and the other one about retention as well. So, there's 139 councils. Only a handful of metro councils have gone ahead with doing something. And I think, from what I could see from the debate around this, in one of our councils close to us, City of South Perth, the Planning Minister, John Kerry, was reported as saying, and I quote, "The state government's position is very clear. We don't support requiring development applications for maintaining or removing trees on private property except through voluntary measures." As far as I know, this position hasn't changed, but I just think it's a state issue and really the state needs to get involved as most other states in Australia have. Thanks.
Councillor Spanbrook, do you wish to speak now or later?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I'm happy to actually, just to speak now, that this is a very sensible amendment, and the reason for that is if the state government don't actually make have a stand or a position on this, it makes it very difficult for local governments. And previously, and just from memory, I think it may have been City of Nedlands, when Minister John Kerry actually reversed a decision that was made some time ago when they did actually there was a resolution for tree retention on private property. So when you have a government that is prepared to make a decision like that, even though it was a few years ago, there is still a possibility they can do that again. And I think it's important that the state government do provide some position, and it does give all local governments, guidance on this. Thank you.
Thank you. A speaker against? Councillor Panayiotou?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just to get some clarity on this. Now, what I wanted to do is speak against the initial motion that came out from Councillor McGoldrick. But this one here, now, is this going to be an amendment on what the officer's advice is going to be?
No, it's an amendment
could also add consistency.
Sorry, this is an amendment on Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion.
Understood.
Are you speaking against it?
I just wish to speak against Councillor McGoldrick's.
If you wait till we finish this amendment. Is there anyone against this amendment? Oh, Councillor Ross, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. The reason I'm against this amendment is because it is drawing the state government into this decision, which is primarily the area of responsibility of the City of Melville. And I'm not sure whether this amendment makes the entire motion conditional upon the state government approving and supporting this decision. So I think it causes confusion rather than clarity. I think that this particular motion to involve the state government can be moved separately as a follow-up if this is accepted and approved. But at the moment, I think it's superfluous and adds confusion to the motion that's before us for consideration. For that reason, I could only support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers against? All right, thank you. We'll go back to Councillor York to wrap up the debate.
I'm happy just to move to a vote. Thanks.
All right, we'll move straight to the vote. This is voting on the amendment to Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion. So if you support the amendment, vote green. If you do not, vote red. Councillor Panayiotou, have you voted? Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Yes, it's carried 7-4. Now we're moving back to the substantive motion, now as amended by Councillor McGoldrick. So do we have a speaker against? Councillor Panayiotou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I will not support this amendment, but however, I do remain mindful of property rights, which is what the issue that Councillor McGoldrick had raised during his speech. And there are practical implications for residents with regards to going for the officer's recommendation. However, a considerable amount of work has gone into developing this draft policy, and I believe it's appropriate that the community has an opportunity to comment on it before council makes its final decision on this policy. Now, we've had various workshops. This initial policy was socialised by the officers. We've had multiple presentations. And I'm also mindful of what Councillor Robbins said about the You know, there was a vote in December, which unfortunately I wasn't here, with regards to compulsory verge trees. Now, this policy, the verge tree policy, we still have a protection on verge trees by allowing this to go to the community to be able to comment. It'll be regarding protecting all trees in the event that this goes through. So it's not about forcing people to plant trees like the verge tree policy was. It's pretty much allowing the community to give us the feedback on the way forward on this after all the work that's been carried out by the office. So to answer the question, I do not support this amendment in this policy.
Speaker 4, Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do support this alternative, and I do speak against the officer's agenda item. For starters, trees have always been a vexed issue, and since I've become a councillor, it has always been a problematic issue and one of the most common problems that I have, that I hear from residents. There are, when you look at my emails, you'll see that the majority of them just trees, trees, trees. And it's not people saying, hey, I want more trees. It's people actually providing issues that the trees have caused. So I do want to give a bit of a different perspective on this. And I think it's quite important that, just to take note of what I'm going to say. So I'm not going to just whinge about trees, about all the negatives of them, because we do always hear the positives and we don't hear the negatives. But I think there's another perspective that has been overlooked, and that is that this is not really a tree policy that's been presented by the officers. It is a private land use control, and you could even say it is disguised as an environmental policy. And with this control, it must be considered that a privately owned tree that becomes a regulated community asset, then you have to ask who should bear the cost of that tree. By that, I mean the resident is responsible for the cost of it. The resident has watered it, the risk, the maintenance, the root damage, and we all know the damage that roots are capable of, the insurance cost, and all in all, the public claims the benefit of this. The public claims the benefit of it. And I'm not talking about the resident who bears the cost. So the city claims the benefit of this. And this is not right. And so to put it in another way, if tree canopy is a public good, then the council should fund it. There has been no consideration of people who have kept large trees for decades, and there are many of them. I'm sure we've all got them in our wards. So therefore, those who haven't had large trees for decades, they've been able to clear trees early to avoid the burden. We are sending the residents of the City of Melville the wrong message. Never let a tree get big enough to become regulated. And I think that is going to be a big issue in the future. So that's something that we really need to take on board, because if people have got trees now that are less than 8 metres, in height, then they'll either pull them out or do whatever they can, so that way then it will not become regulated. And so therefore this policy is not creating canopy, it actually captures canopy that is paid for and maintained by residents. So just a couple of things to think about, that, with people now, if this was not supported and we go to the officer one and it is supported, there'll be early clearing, and I've already heard from people who have actually done early clearing, and I think it's very sad because there are some very lovely trees that have been removed because they know that in the future they're looking at future development or expansion in their properties. Encroachment on private property, I've always been against encroachment on private property and government overreach. It also exposes residents to neighbour conflict, and also potentially costs more than it is worth with litigation costs, and that's the other thing that we need to take on board. And even though in the officer's agenda item it does say 200,000, I suspect it'll be a lot more than that when there are going to be issues with people perhaps removing them illegally, and then I won't even go into the development costs, the development application and the effort with the residents. So I think I've actually made myself quite clear that, that I do support this alternative, and just, take on board again that people may never let a tree get big enough to become regulated. And I think that's really important. Thank you.
Just a question to Director Varelis. In the event that this alternative motion it gets passed, it then goes out for public comment. We receive the public comment, and if that public comment is that the public want a tree policy, then it comes back to us and we might approve a tree policy. Would that go out for public comment again?
Through the chair, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it would.
Just a point of clarification, Mr Varelis. Item 2 says determines not to proceed with the draft local planning policy at regulated trees on private land. So that would in fact put a stop to having a tree policy. Am I correct in understanding that?
Through the chair, that's correct, but that's the decision before council this evening. If a future council meeting, the hypothetical scenario that you posed to me was that if there was overwhelming support for a tree policy, that would then be a decision that council make at a future council meeting, and we would bring back the tree policy because it's important that council regulate this through policy. The Zorzi decision through the State Administrative Tribunal has made it clear that tree removal of a certain size and scale warrants development. This is too ambiguous of a topic to leave without a policy for the city to be, and its officers to be guided on how to implement that development, being the removal of trees. So if this policy is, the position that was posed to me was that if this policy was advertised, there was overwhelming support for a tree policy, it would be presented back to council with that community consultation. And if this was overwhelmingly, the community feedback was that this position was overwhelmingly not supported, the officers would recommend again the regulated tree policy that's before council this evening, because either way, a policy position needs to be arrived at.
Yes, I understand a policy position needs to be arrived at, but can I ask Head of Governance, would it require a rescission motion if the community overwhelmingly wanted a tree policy? Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I think it would depend on the circumstances of a future request for a policy in this space. We would need to determine that based when that request comes forward, because it's actually, at this point, it's saying it's not to proceed with the draft local planning policy. Unfortunately, I don't think I can give you a definitive answer without further details in relation to a future hypothetical situation.
Well, the thing is, if the public wanted and were overwhelmingly in support of a regulated tree policy, then it would be a draft that would go back to them. So how would you resolve that conundrum?
If the community came forward with overwhelming support, it may not be this draft that goes out. So we would need to determine that at that point in time.
So if it was a different draft, it would not be a rescission. Am I correct in understanding that?
Possibly. I may just defer to the Director Legal.
Mr Yildiz?
Thank you, and to assist you, Madam Mayor, as well as Council. So if Council was to move and support the current alternative motion, that would mean that that current draft that is provided with the Council report is determined not to proceed. However, should Council want to consider a different draft, different terms that regulate trees on private property, that would be a different decision on a different policy.
Okay, thank you. All right, that clarifies point 2. Councillor Wheatland, did you have a question? All right, I need a speaker for. Councillor Wheatland, you're quite correct.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And look, just on the back of what Director Varelis just said, and the questions that you asked, Madam Mayor, in relation to point 2 and in relation to the community consultation, only strengthens my alternative motion without notice. And it only strengthens what I'm going to say in opposition to this alternate motion from Councillor McGoldrick. I've got to say I was floored when I saw this in the agenda, in the distribution. A new councillor who, you know, has the courage to put up something like this, and I commend him for that. But over this whole process that's been going on for, what, 2-3 years, it's been informed by strong community voices that aren't necessarily, or people say that they could be the loud minority in the community. I sat with all of these comments and all of the thoughts going through my head, so I decided to develop a detailed survey actually, and put it out to the community over the past 10 days. And I've just sent you a summary of the survey results to your inbox. And look, I just listened to Councillor McGoldrick and Councillor Spanbrook, and look, I acknowledge the concerns and the views that they're bringing forward, because the survey that I put out there has a range of views, from protect trees on private land at all costs to protecting private property rights. So this was, today I got 55 responses. I shared it into every community group across the City of Melville. I've copped some abuse. Someone told me to resign. Someone told me to go kill myself and to get a life. So, you know, I think that kind of dialogue is really, you know, it doesn't help the situation. But in my short survey in 10 days, over, what did I say, 125 responses, it was pretty close. But predominantly, 44.6% of those that answered said they want to advertise the draft regulated trees on private land policy for public feedback before any final draft. Previous consultation sees numbers at about 63% of community that would like to see this policy developed, which is what we have done. And to be clear, the decision tonight is not about whether or not landowners will have to go and fight for their trees on their property. This is about advertising the draft policy that we've worked on for some time based on community feedback, and it will give the community the opportunity to give their views on that. Look, I want to read out some of the comments that that people have said, and I'm going to read it from all sides of the spectrum. You know, like, the city has allowed developers to destroy canopy and does not give strong greens settings. There needs to be a way bigger idea around green scale and streetscape and planning. A balanced approach. Education and incentives are important, but Perth's canopy continues to decline. We already regulate many activities on private land where there is a broader community impact. Mature trees provide shade, cooling habitat and neighbourhood amenity that benefit the wider community and beyond. Education, we talk about families. Councillor McGoldrick said we've got to be fair to families. Well, we've got to be fair to all families, not just families that want a pool. And to be fair, this policy is not about whether or not you can put a pool in. I personally don't think the draft policy goes far enough, because you all know I wanted the Walga policy. I think the policy that the officers have worked on very hard with the elected members and not the community yet, has come to a place where it gives landowners the opportunity to do development and to renovate and to put in a family pool. And the officers will assess whether or not a tree can be removed, and there is in the policy a 2-for-1 or cash in lieu, but education aimed at young families so that they can recognise the values of trees, shade, habitat, and as many newer homes are purchased by young families. Keep your grubby mitts off private property, you deluded beep. Definitely, oh no, I won't read that one out. This sets a precedent where the council oversteps the rights of what homeowners can do on their private property. Private trees are not just in those front yards, it includes backyards too. If they are concerned about tree canopy, focus on council land, verges and public open spaces, not in people's backyards. So let's talk about trees on verges, trees on the foreshore. There's been numerous cases down at the Adderdale foreshore where trees have been poisoned.
Sorry, councillor, can you wrap up your debate, please?
Oh yeah, I can. Where residents and ratepayers go out and actively poison trees to protect their view. So look, I think that in lieu of what Director Varelis just said, that to proceed with this alternate motion, and if the community consultation comes back and says we want a policy, then we've got to go through the whole process again. It's going to cost a whole lot of money. It's going to take a whole lot of time. So seriously think about supporting this motion, and maybe don't support this motion and support my alternative motion. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Wheatland. Is there another speaker against? There are. Okay, well, let's proceed with the speaker for. Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll start by saying what I'm about to say is not a criticism of the city officers. The council asked the city officers to create their policy as a result of a council resolution and further engagement via elected member engagement sessions, and they've worked hard to give effect to what some have asked them to do. I also commend the officers for moving quickly to amend their policy where I identified that the original definition of maintenance pruning in their policy would have effectively resulted in any resident having to pay Standards Australia around $100 to obtain a licence to the Australian standard in order to understand what the definition of maintenance pruning was. I think having had the opportunity to consider the officers' policy, that we actually gave them a very difficult job. I'm not sure the intended outcome can be easily achieved without major problems. And this may be why, as far as I can tell, the state government has so far declined to lead the way on this issue. And I don't think it's fair to expect local governments to pick up the slack where we simply haven't got the resources to do it. The issue should be determined by the state government, as state governments have in other jurisdictions of Australia. I do note that when this issue was debated in one of our neighbouring councils, South Perth, a council that is about half our size, that councillors there raised it would cost somewhere in the order of $585,000 a year to implement such a policy, where the costs of further detailed mapping, prosecutions, compliance and ongoing advertising was factored in. To me, that's a lot of money, and we would get better bang for buck putting that towards things like additional planning, given I've been told the approximate costs of establishing a verge tree is somewhere in the order of $500 to $1,000. I do note what appears to be the initial success of our council's motion to impose compulsory verge trees in commercial areas, given I've been told by the administration in the initial rollout approximately 200 trees are to be planted on approximately 150 properties, which has resulted in only one complaint out of those property owners that have been notified. I note that the officers have indicated that its policy may require residents to obtain an arborist report, and in some cases engineering reports, which may cost somewhere in the order of $500 to $1,000 each as part of the residents' costs in obtaining development approval for tree damaging activity. So there's significant costs that not only will the city incur, that further expands the role of local government, which bakes in these costs into our budget on an ongoing basis, but there will also be significant costs to ratepayers that seek to remove trees from their property. This decision also follows an earlier council decision of this year to greatly expand the city's ongoing budget in relation to private and public CCTV. Contrary to some of the public commentary, there does not appear to be overwhelming support for private tree regulation. The city's survey shows there was not majority support for a significant tree register, and in line with that, I support Councillor McGoldrick's motion in the interest of reducing the further intrusion of local government on private property rights and so that our residents maintain the freedom to choose how to deal with trees on their own private property as they see fit. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor York. A speaker against? Oh, we've got a few. Councillor Panayiotou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess this isn't whether we agree or disagree with the policy. It's more about allowing the community to give us feedback on this policy. And by not allowing the community, it would allow...
Sorry, Councillor Panayiotou, did you speak earlier on this item?
Yes, I did, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, well, you can't speak twice. So we're going to move on to somebody else. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I might start with something along the lines of what Councillor Panayiotou was saying, but anyway. So what we're actually voting on tonight we're not here to debate time in memoriam about our personal views and we all recognise that this is a vexed issue, but it's also an important issue that we need to come to a resolution. We need to come up with a solution. So what we're voting on tonight really is to acknowledge that the officer's recommendation for the proposed policy is an accurate reflection of the discussions we've already had, the feedback we've already received, and the process that we've followed so far. So we should be focused on the policy itself and looking at the items within that policy to go out to the community. I'd like to commend Councillor McGoldrick for his speech at the start here. It was certainly very impressive. However, I think a few of the anecdotes that he gave from members and some of the issues they've raised are actually addressed in the policy. There's quite a lot of information in here, and it demonstrates that that we are coming up with a reasonable approach here. There will be cases where trees can be removed according to the proposed policy that we're putting out. I don't know that a swimming pool would be one of them, perhaps, but there's certainly other reasons for that. So I think we need to keep that in mind. It's not about one elected member or officer or deputy or email or Facebook post, what they have had to say or what the view is of any of those individually, or for that matter, how much time we've spent speaking about a particular view. It's about bringing it together and sending it out to the community after, going through due process ourselves. So I think we need to remember that. I'll mention briefly there, with all due respect, I think the officer recommendation is a more accurate reflection of the discussions we've had than Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion. So for perhaps that reason alone, I would be voting against this alternative motion. Having said all that, I will remind elected members that canopy loss is a huge issue in our city. It refuses to go away. We're talking about tree canopy all the time for a variety of different reasons, and we should all be well aware by now that the canopy loss we're experiencing in our city is coming from private land. The city is doing what it can, and on city-owned land, tree canopy is increasing, but unfortunately we have a net loss because of what is going on private land, and I believe we need to do something about that. Briefly, Councillor Robbins spoke well as well, but I have to say I think it was a little misleading to say that we are not doing what we can on city-owned land. I think the motions that I've put up and the resolutions that we've made have certainly been a step in the right direction to doing as much as we possibly can on regarding verge trees. I think we decided to roll out a voluntary system for remaining 2 suburbs, but the intent was certainly that once that was done, that we would be moving to planting trees on verges where deemed suitable by the city. So we are doing what we can, but the burning issue is on private land. I highlight the Zorzi decision that Director Varelis has brought up as well. This is a critical thing. We need to be doing something about this, and also Canopy's coming up with density as well. And we've had consultants telling us that it does not matter the density of the development. Basically, the trees are being lost anyway. And so the only way we can do something about that is to have some control over trees on private land. I think a development application for a tree.
Green, can you wrap up your debate, please?
Yeah, I'm just about there. Development application for a tree should be considered a welcome addition to other regulations that we have when people are doing things on their private land. I don't see why a tree should be any different to, let's say, a pergola or any sort of modifications to a house or to a property. I think it makes sense that we do that. I believe that there is it's a vexed issue, but I do believe that the majority of the community wants to see an improvement to our tree canopy, and therefore I don't think we should abandon the process that we've followed already. I think we should acknowledge the work we've done already, and I think the officer recommendation does that. As such, I would vote against the alternative motion.
Madam Mayor, could I please seek a point of clarification?
Yes.
Thank you. Taking your advice that misleading information is not a point of order. I waited till the end. So Councillor Green said that the council made a decision regarding verge trees that after we'd finished rolling out the last couple of suburbs that officers would be looking to plant a tree on every verge, but I believe that's not what council resolved. So could we have some clarification on that, please?
Director Varelis, would you be able to...
Madam Mayor, can I call the motion to be put, please?
We're just getting an answer to a question. Director Coton, would you have a response to that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, the decision in the December meeting the report did specifically raise the issue of compulsory planting, and as opposed and compared to voluntary planting. And council did decide not to do the compulsory planting on verges, but to commence it in the commercial and industrial areas. The policy is worded in such a way that when the intention of staff is that when we have been through the area and given people the option, that then something would come back to council, which would be perhaps in a couple of years' time. And the existing policy does give staff the authority to do that, but on the basis that council had been quite clear in having that debate and discussion and providing direction, staff would come back to council to get some clarity around that. So I don't know if that's answered the question or confused things more.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a
Could I say something though? Just briefly, please?
Briefly?
I've already asked for the motion to be put. I've already asked for the motion to be put.
Yes, that's right. Councillor Spanbrook has moved a procedural motion to put the motion. And do you have a seconder? Oh, Councillor McGoldrick, you can't second it. Okay, Councillor Ross, you're happy to second that? Okay, thank you. Does she speak to this one? I don't think she No, does she have 2 minutes to speak to it? No. There is no reply on a motion to put, so we're just going to put that straight to the vote. So if you're in favour of the motion to put, that means no further debate, then please vote red. If you want to hear more debate, vote green.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Sorry, I'll say that again.
Other way around.
If you want more debate, if you don't want any further debate, vote green for the put to put motion. If you want more debate, vote red.
Sorry, can you reset it? Because I voted based on what you originally said. Yeah.
Well, you can change your vote. Yeah, that's right. So number one, green is the motion be put, no further debate. Red is we want further debate. That is lost 4-7. Okay, we have pretty much reached the end of the debate anyway, so I'm looking for a speaker for. I can take one more speaker against and then we'll wrap up the debate. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief because I think everyone has covered a lot of good points as well. So I think really I urge everyone to reject this alternate motion because I think there's three critical reasons that's already been addressed. So there's that legal ambiguity about the Zorzi's case. And it also, based on the previous survey as well, it ignores the wishes of the community. And it actually shifts the financial burden back to the city. And I'll talk about it a bit more. But yeah, if we look at the financial and environmental, we know that we are losing 20 hectares of canopy, that's in the report, on private land each year. So if you were to approve this McGoldrick's motion, what's said in the officer's risk assessment, it says that we are guaranteeing a long-term cumulative loss of mature trees. Because if we go down this pathway, there's really zero mechanism to retain or replace private trees. Also, this alternate motion as well has its own user, I guess, like pay revenue stream. So if it's classified as a medium tree, we get $1,000. If it's classified as a large tree, we get $2,000. So this draft policy says that if there was no other site, this has to be paid to fund planting trees in city managed land, and also to cover, and that would indirectly cover the 200 grand per year in FTEs as well. So I think actually by supporting this, you're almost giving the free pass to developers to just clear land and not give back any money to the community to plant more trees to offset the private land. And yeah, I think for Zorzi's as well, the current policy is quite clear on how to deal with removal of trees. So by not doing that, we again have to do more work on point 3 to amend an exemption, which gets us to potentially more legal loopholes as well. And I think the feedback, so I think it was late last year, there was a survey of 838 survey responses. So 74% supported the use of a policy to regulate trees lost on a private land. So I guess the sample size on Michael McGoldrick's just, asking the two people, I don't think it's a valid sample or size to represent the entire, city's population. I think 838 survey is a much more accurate number. So I'll leave it as that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lim.
Can I ask Councillor Lim. I've got really confused with what you're saying then. Are you supporting this or are you against
Councillor, I
it?
think that he spoke against.
Against
He
it?
spoke
Right,
against,
okay, thank you.
yes. All right, we need to wrap the debate up now. So Councillor McGoldrick, could you please wrap up the debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's be clear. The suggestion to preserve tree canopy on private property is understandable at a surface level. However, it should not be our families doing the heavy lifting for maintaining urban greening goals. Yep, I too appreciate for people who've lived in the city of Melville for a long time to see our old suburbs change and notice established trees being removed is sad. And it is disheartening. The suburbs are changing and development is impacting the space for trees. If only everyone could afford a quarter-acre block with room out the back for chooks, a garden and a handful of trees, but we can't. And we don't want to be blaming our families for a punitive policy to our community. But there is some good news from the Melville's Urban Forest Strategic Plan, adopted in 2027. You'll love this, George. It aims to protect and enhance the city's leafy character, visual amenity and biodiversity on public land. The results are positive, and the council, as you will see in my area, are already doing great work with tree canopy on public land, and it's increasing. It's increasing the potential where the council have the tools, they have the authority, they have the greatest potential to grow canopy. What the community are asking for is a balance of trust and common sense, clearly documenting that the removal of trees on private land is exempt from requiring a development approval. It's the sensible way forward for the three reasons I outlined earlier. It's unfair to families, it's unreasonable for ratepayers to spend all this money, it's unnecessary because we already have a sound planning policy that encourages sensible development and already deals with trees on a normal development application for a property. I wish to acknowledge the alternative motion tonight is not a rejection on trees, but instead a redirection of efforts towards where we can, as a community, can make a difference. An education-based approach encouraging private landholders where we invest in our residents and support our community as custodians of trees. We shouldn't be punishing people. We should be rewarding people who have trees on their land. They work hard, they pay the cost of living in Melville, and they are entitled to make a personal choice about the use of their private land. There's been engagement surveys, there's been all sorts of correspondence and elected meetings. We've been talking about it forever. We've had engagement surveys with limited response for 100% of the population who this will affect. We cannot put this punitive policy on top of the poor families. The motion makes a proportionate, education-focused approach to urban canopy rather than a compliance-based one. It reduces council's resources burden while maintaining reasonable expectations for private landowners. This is a tremendous opportunity for council to get this right, for our landowners, for our community, and yes, for our trees. I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McGoldrick. We now have the vote. So Green is for supporting Councillor McGoldrick's alternative motion of no tree policy, around that line, and Red is against. That is lost 5-6. Now we're moving on to the officer's recommendation. So the officer's recommendation, I need a mover and seconder for this recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Lim. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Panayiotou. Councillor Lim, can you open the debate, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't speak too much again. I think it's pretty much the opposite of the alternate motion. I'm really want to appreciate the time the officers has gone through with this in all the emails and was really well done. I think it incorporates various surveys into one, I think, a very well-written policy. So, yeah, I do believe that, I hope that, this survey catches wind, because it is a very, just encourage, all elected members to try to get as many people completing the survey as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Paniotto, do you wish to speak now or later? No speaker against.
Can we go to a vote?
We can go to a vote, but we can, yes, we'll go to a vote. So there's no further speakers. We'll go to the vote. So green means you are voting for the officer's recommendation. In other words, this policy goes out for advertising, and red is you are against. That is 6-5 in favour using a casting vote. Item C, 26392, statements of financial. Councillor Lim, seconded. Councillor Green, any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. Scheme number 6, review further preliminary community consultation. Can I have a mover and seconder, please, for the officer's recommendation? Councillor McGoldrick, seconded. Councillor Spanbrook. Is there any voice to the contrary? Is anyone against? I declare it carried. We're now moving on to motions with previous notice. We have 15.1, notice of motion problematic waste. We need, this motion is proposed by Councillor Lim. Councillor Lim, do you wish to proceed? Do you have a seconder? Councillor York.
Thanking the officer for the advice note of this motion. So the advice note confirms 3 things. So it confirms that the proposal aligns with the city's resource recovery and waste minimalization policy and the waste avoidance and recovery strategy 2030. So it also acknowledges that there's a service gap. There's a current service gap. And it also warns that if no action occurs and only minimal approach is taken, contamination in existing services will increase. So the motion asks for one thing. It asks for a report. So there's no capital or no further expenditure. It's just an officer contributing their time on this report and to investigate, collecting waste streams in our facilities that it currently can't take certain waste products, and also identify how we can expand access for residents as well. So, and also it does examine a gap that I found as well. That's governed by the council. But that may change when, the Canning Library occurs in, part of the Riviera site. But this all will come through the report, hopefully. They will assess the viability of having a recycling hub in that space. Last week, I went and looked at the recycling hub in our own community city center foyer. So not sure if anyone had a chance to actually look at it. So there's pretty much four chutes for household batteries, printer cartridges, mobile phones, light globes. So then there's a poster just above it telling that not to use this hub for various ways and sort of redirects people to other sites. So if most people are like me, I probably wouldn't take the extra trip to do all these different places, to different venues and drop off all my recycling stations. I admire some of the eco warriors that do that, but for me, I would only do it when I'm collecting my, the free 3 bin liners that we get as part of our rate notice, all for free. So, and I also saw that the infrastructure of our current system has, fluorescent tubes next to those chutes as well. So those fluorescent tubes are sort of bolt on by like a plastic little loop. So these are mercury-containing material that's just sort of freestanding, hanging there, which I don't think is a fantastic idea. And I think there's a CCTV sort of like pointing right at the chute as well, which sort of suggests to me that there is, contamination in the past, because we're dealing with lithium batteries. They are, as we know, very dangerous fire risks. And our current chutes, they don't really have any ability to contain these lithium battery. It contains all the safe AA, AAAs, or the tiny ones. Because, generally to minimize fire, you want to close it away from oxygen. All of our chutes are all currently exposed in the air and completely open. I think also there is a bit of, when I was looking into this, there's a bit of discrepancy in all the different, I guess, recycling hubs. We use the same word for our recycling hubs. So on our website, I think there's 4 recycling hubs, but I definitely do know there's one in Willagee and there's one in Brentwood. And they all take different goods. So as a resident, I wouldn't be able to discern this, or I had to actually look really, really, really hard to find out the difference between all of our different recycling hubs. So I think there needs to be a review. And also I feel that the recycling hub, the wording does feel like it accepts a lot more than what it should do. So I think, there needs to be an analysis. I encourage.
Can you wrap up your debate, please?
I encourage councillors to vote on this. Just hoping that we can collect more waste streams. As we know, in August, there's going to be more contaminants because all those food containers are no longer recyclable, and they will go to the rate bin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lim. Is there any speaker against? Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the officer please advise us that how much these reports generally cost? Just rough estimate, please. Thanks.
Director Coton.
I wouldn't have a cost. It would be, most of the information that is requested is information that is at hand. So it would be, perhaps a day's time of an officer collating it all and putting it together, and perhaps a little bit of other time as well. I wouldn't have an exact cost for that, but most of the information is readily available.
Okay, thank you. Is there any speaker against? Anyone against this? You would like to? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll ask Councillor York if you'd like to speak now or later.
I'll speak now, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think it's a fairly innocuous motion. As Director Cohen just said, basically no cost for the city to undertake this investigation, and I commend Councillor Lim for the work he's put into it, and also taking on the feedback from all the councillors in ESs. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor McGoldrick.
There's a backhanded way of acknowledging an amazing lady in the room is M. Charlton, Community Volunteer of 2023. And I was just going to ask Councillor Lim, would you consider working with the amazing M. Charlton and Bottletop Hill for their amazing work that they do in the community? And also, I retract my opposition to your Wonderful.
Okay.
Motion.
No need to commit. But just a question, is there a speaker against? No, there's not. Okay, if there is no speaker against, or if nobody is against this, I will declare it carried. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item 16, motions without previous notice. There are no motions without previous notice. Item 17, matters for which the meeting was closed to the public. There were no matters where the meeting was closed to the public. So number 18, decisions while the meeting was closed to the public. Well, there were none because we didn't go behind closed doors. So 19 is closure for the purposes of, so there being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed at 9:45. Well done. And just pause for a moment while we turn off the live streaming.